Good morning and welcome to Cradle-to-Career's Data and Tools Advisory Board meeting. My name is Mary Kate Cruz-Jones and I am the Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships. Today's meeting will be a hybrid meeting with members conducting this meeting from remote locations. That's why you see all of our faces, as well as some of us are here at the Cradle-to-Career office at 400 R Street in Sacramento. I want to welcome and thank the members of the public who have joined us here today, and we look forward to your engagement. Before we begin, one small note to members, please ensure that you all remain on camera throughout the duration of the meeting. This is to be in compliance with the requirements set forth in Bagley-Keene and that Open Meeting Act. If at any moment members need to step away from their camera, that's totally fine. You can turn them off and then just let the rest of us know, as well as members of the public, or let the C2C staff know, and we're happy to voice that over for you. Okay, let's take a look at translation services here today. So we will be offering translation services in Spanish. Thank you, Mark and Leticia, for your help today. To listen to comments given in Spanish, please select the globe icon at the bottom of the screen. It says interpretation. Then select language interpretation and your language, for example, Spanish, which is what we have services for today. You will then hear a live rendering of the comments in Spanish. So I will now pause for a moment for Mark, our Spanish interpreter, to translate this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary Kate. We'll provide the same access instructions for those listening in Spanish. Muy buenos días a todos que nos acompañan. Queremos dejarles saber que tenemos servicios de interpretación al vivo disponible para la sesión de hoy. En la parte inferior de su pantalla encontrará un icono de un globo terráqueo que dice Interpretation o interpretación. Selecciónelo y de ahí seleccione su idioma Spanish o español. Y así podrá escuchar el programa enteramente en su idioma. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you, Mary Kate. Back to you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. For all members speaking today, we ask that you introduce yourselves and say your job title or affiliation. Please speak slowly. I know I need reminders on this. And then briefly pause before proceeding with your comments. So I can model this right now. Mary Kate Cruz-Jones, Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships. And then I would proceed with my comments. Land acknowledgement, thank you. As we begin today, we acknowledge this virtual meeting is taking place throughout unceded territory of California, home to nearly 200 tribal nations. I am joining today from Sacramento, the traditional land of the Maidu, Miwok, and Nisenan people, whose presence, past, present, and future, we honor and respect. We will now pause for a moment to reflect. We recognize the ancestral land on which we are collectively gathered and our responsibilities to support and foster learning through the dissemination of knowledge consistent with the Cradle-to-Career data systems work to advance equity. We hope this acknowledgement encourages individuals to think about what it means to occupy space on Indigenous lands, and we want attendees to learn more about the ancestral lands on which they reside. And there's a website right here for you, nativeland.ca. Okay, today's meeting, let's take a look at that agenda. Today's meeting will be run in accordance with the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, and there are a total of 9 items on the agenda. For folks following along from the public, all companion materials are posted on the C2C website. And before we begin today's meeting, in upholding our C2C's office's transparency value, I'd like to share a few housekeeping notes. Today and in future meetings, to help us stay on track timing-wise, we will have a timer. You'll see this on Zoom, and that will help us. It will be in the right-hand corner and will also be displayed in my box. And this tool will allow us to be mindful of the time and will also assist with pacing. So the first time you'll see this is during those proposal presentations that we have, and then There's also a timer that's displayed during public comment. To set the tone for today's meeting, I'd like to begin by acknowledging today will serve as an opportunity for members to provide recommendations and feedback. For example, during agenda item 5, this will be a really big, heavy engagement item, and I really look forward to it. The office would like to use today's meeting as an opportunity to leverage members' unique experiences and perspectives to inform the current work of Cradle-to-Career. In addition, today we will also have an opportunity for advisory board members to provide recommendations on future opportunities for Cradle-to-Career, and we'll see that in agenda item 6. The office values your partnership, your open feedback, and I would like to take a moment to thank you all for joining us today. As always, we appreciate your engagement and we are listening. Prior to today's meeting, the office received 6 written comments for agenda item 6. I've now mentioned this a few times. That's our proposal agenda item. Presentation discussion of the Cradle-to-Career Data and Tools Advisory Board proposal process. For members of the public who are interested in listening to this agenda item, or if you would like to provide public comment, we anticipate taking this item around 12:15 p.m. So please feel free to return during that time should you not want to hear the other half of the meeting. Okay, we have a very full agenda and we plan to end today's meeting in the late afternoon. Anticipate breaking around 12:05 p.m. and then adjourning the meeting at about 2 p.m. I'll be the timekeeper today and hope to keep us on track. All right, let's establish that quorum. So I'd like to call the meeting to order at 10:09 a.m. And Stephanie Gutierrez Valdez, please call that roll.
Thank you. Member Catanzarite?
Present.
Member Shuck?
Present.
Member Harlick?
Present.
Member Khanna?
Present.
Member Mehta?
Present.
Member Milan?
Present.
Member Norris?
Present.
Member Ortiz-Villar?
Present.
Member Fong?
Present.
Member Reed?
Present.
Member Shack?
Present.
Member Schmidt-Temple?
Present.
Member Tarasova?
Present.
Member Unda?
Present.
Member Watson?
Present.
Member Yi?
Present.
For the clarity of the record, we have 16 members present. We have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm very excited that we have a full house with us today. We will now move on to agenda item 2, the introduction of new Data and Tools Advisory Board members. So at the August 15, 2025 Governing Board meeting, the Governing Board appointed 6 new Data and Tools Advisory Board members. If you follow Cradle-to-Career closely, you might recognize some of those new faces. And these folks will be serving a 3-year term that's effective until 2028. And today I'd like to give these folks an opportunity to introduce themselves. So they'll take about 30 seconds and we'll do a quick round robin. We'll begin with you, Tina.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Tina Chuk. I am an associate professor at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. And my background is a teacher educator, and I was formerly a elementary, middle, and high school science teacher.
Thank you. Next, we'll be moving on to Ritu, please.
Good morning, everyone. It's such an honor to be with you all. Hi, Tina. Lovely to see you again and be on this team with you. My name is Ritu Khanna, and I've been with the San Francisco Unified School District for the last 30 years. I have been the Chief of Research Planning and Assessment for the last 25 years with the district. And this has given me the opportunity to really learn what our educator needs are in terms of data and how access and usability of data can inform so many decisions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. We will next move on to Renee.
Good morning, everyone. I am Renee Segal-Mehta, Vice President for the Chino Valley Chamber of Commerce. Delighted to be part of the board. Part of our chamber, I am a U.S. Chamber Talent Pipeline Management Fellow, and we're developing career pipelines and sustainable careers in our region. And so I look forward to being a part of that and also developing a strong apprenticeship program and where we can create sustainable careers using the data. Thank you.
Thank you. Cameron, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cameron Schmidt-Temple. I'm a project policy analyst at UC Berkeley Center for Educational Partnerships. My work specifically centers on developing and implementing strategic data initiatives to support all students in accessing and succeeding in higher education, with a particular focus on first-generation low-income students in underserved schools and communities all throughout California. Before this role, I worked directly with students as a college advisor in high schools in the Bay Area and Southern California. In my work outside of CEP, I partner with organizations on projects involving research, curriculum development, strategic data management, and impact evaluation. So I'm super excited to be able to contribute to the board and looking forward to my term here.
Thank you. Wonderful. Member Viviana.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here. I'm super excited about being here. I'm the Director of Institutional Research and Planning at El Camino College. This is a community college that is in Torrance in Southern California. And here I do that, institutional research, data, dashboards, a lot of strategic planning. We also do a lot of assessment. I serve as the chair of the Institutional Effectiveness Committee. That's a new committee here at the college. So we're working very hard to get that data-informed decision-making being implemented. I also co-chair the Planning and Budget Committee in the college. And I've worked in institutional effectiveness in general and accreditation for very many years here in the US and also abroad.
Thank you. And last, Winnie, please.
Hi, I'm Winnie. I'm a PhD student at UC Irvine, and my fields of interest are labor market decisions, social mobility, and I'm in the educational policy and social context track here. Before this, I worked at the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco doing economic research, and I'm really excited to contribute my perspective on data use and querying data and things like that. So looking forward to it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful. So welcome, members. If folks can just leave me in a quick round of applause, even if you do this quietly in your own space. We're super excited to have the new members on. And I'd like to pause quickly. We could take a comment or two if there's any of our older members that have been on the board that would like to make any comments. So feel free to raise your hand. Well, I'm sure folks will be very excited to share more later. On behalf of your other advisory board members and Cradle-to-Career governing board and staff, very, very warm welcome. And we look forward to hearing more from you 6 new members today. I'd love to move on to our next agenda item. If we could change the slide, please. And again. Yeah, fabulous. Perfect. Agenda item 3. We're now going to be taking a look at the approval of the Data and Tools Advisory Board consent calendar, and I will be presenting this agenda item. So the matters on the consent calendar, thank you so much, are routine in nature and are approved by a single vote. Prior to action, the Data and Tools Advisory Board members and the public will be given the opportunity to remove any item from the consent calendar. Items removed from the consent calendar may be heard immediately following approval of the consent calendar or set aside until later in the day. So we have the slide in front of us that says what is in front of us, which is the July 11, 2025 Data and Tools and Community Engagement Advisory Board's meeting minutes. Is there anybody that has would like to remove this? Hearing and seeing no objection, Can I have a motion to approve the data and tools consent calendar as presented? Member Cradle-to-Career, please.
Yes, I move to approve the Data and Tools Advisory Board consent calendar as presented.
Fantastic. I have a motion. May I have a second, please?
This is Member Fong. I second the motion.
Thank you so much. With a motion from Member Cradle-to-Career and a second from Member Fong, what I'd love to do now is open it up to public comment. So Stephanie, can you please take us through this item?
Confirming we have no one at the C2C office wishing to make a public comment, I'll open it up to Zoom. For members of the public attending via Zoom, please raise your hand at this time if you would like to comment on this agenda item. Okay, seeing no raised hands, I'll close the public comment portion of this agenda item.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. What we just saw a preview of are those timers, should we get public comment in case we have new attendees on the line. Again, we have that motion, we have that second. Stephanie Gutierrez Valdez, please take us through a roll call.
Member Catanzarite,
Aye.
Member Shook,
Aye.
Member Harlick,
Aye.
Member Khanna,
Aye.
Member Mehta,
Aye.
Member Milan,
Aye.
Member Norris, okay, Member Ortiz Villar,
Aye.
Member Fong,
Aye.
Member Reed,
Aye.
Member Shuck,
Yes.
Member Schmidt-Temple,
Aye.
Member Tarasoba,
Aye.
Member Unda,
Yes.
Member Watson,
Yes.
Member Yi,
Yes.
okay. For the clarity of the record, we have 15 ayes.
Wonderful. The motion passes. Okay, great. Let's move on to the next agenda item, number 4, which will be an update on the Office of Cradle-to-Career data presented by our Executive Director, Marianne Bates. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary Kate Cruz-Jones. It's so nice to see all of you here today, and I want to give a special welcome to our new members of the Data and Tools Advisory Board. The purpose of my ED update and the reason I kick off the meetings with this is to give you a little bit of an overview of the work that our office is doing, what are some of the things that have happened since the last time you met. And sometimes these touch on the same kinds of things that I share in my ED updates with the governing board. Sometimes it's new and different. So I do encourage you to look at the ED updates from our governing board meetings as well. The last one was in August, and we have all of those available on our website. We have the video recordings there too. So what I'll do is I'll walk through, if we can go to the next slide, I'll walk through a couple of topics, and then we'll leave some time at the end for any things, any responses you have, anything you want to lift up, or any questions that you might have for me as well. So today I'll talk a little bit about the query builder. You'll hear more about that from my colleague Ryan Estriato later today too. A new lesson plan challenge that we've just launched. I'll highlight parts of our work plan that the governing board just adopted and approved at their August meeting. The legislative report we submitted to the legislature. A few notes on the budget that passed this in the past months, and concluding with how you can engage and how you can be a part of this work and lift the work up and support it and bring it to the communities that you work with. So that's an outline of the ED update. If we can go to the next slide. So taking a step back, in April of this year, we released the Student Pathways Data Story, the first dashboard that we released publicly. And you can find that on our website. You've all seen those pictures and the visualizations from it. As soon as we released that, or shortly thereafter, we got feedback from the research community, including some of you, who said, this dashboard is great, and we love the ability to download the data. However, there's about 9,000 cuts of data behind each of the 6 pictures. And so one of the first requests we got is for that to be available in a few neat and tidy CSV files. And so we listened to that feedback and have created those flat files, have put them up on the website. And you can think of this as kind of a first step towards the query builder tools that our office will continue to build that let people do their own analysis of the underlying data more directly than is possible in a dashboard. So we think of this, it's the same data that powers both, but they're kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum, where the dashboard is super easy for anyone to navigate, right? Anyone can play with the filters and say, show me this picture, but just for my district, etc. The CSV files are great for researchers who want to do their own analysis or create their own visuals with it. CSV files are perhaps not the most visually inviting thing, but the research community loves them. So it's the same data, but 2 really different ways to access it. We are excited about how people have already been using it. There are already a number of blog posts and analyses that have come out using this underlying data. And so the invitation to you here is, please use this data to develop your own products, blog posts, fact sheets, one-pagers, visualizations, and please be in touch with our team. We really want to lift up stories of how this data has been used because our data partners have put tremendous effort into stewarding and collecting this data. Our team has put tremendous effort into linking it and making it available. And so when it is useful, when you use it to answer questions, when you use it to create a resource, we really want to hear about it. So please don't be shy. Let us know how you're using it. Let us know what questions you have and help us lift up examples of how the data has been used. And this, as we highlight on the page, this is just the first of many steps for this project, and we really look forward to working alongside you on that. So that's the first step of the Query Builder. Next, I'm really excited to share that we recently launched a lesson plan challenge. And the reason we did this is that we care a lot not only about making sure that our dashboard is available on our website, but really supporting people in using it and extending the reach of that dashboard as much as possible, especially to students and educators. So this lesson plan challenge invites teachers, whether they're a middle school or high school teacher, a college professor, or an aspiring teacher in a teacher training program, we're inviting them to design lesson plans that engage users in using the Student Pathways dashboard. And this is to help encourage data literacy, encourage young people to work with their data, and to really maximize the reach and usefulness of that dashboard. So this launched just in September. The submission deadline isn't until the spring. So there's lots of time to get the word out to different communities and to educators about this. If we can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, this is open to middle and high school teachers, college faculty, and aspiring teachers. And there's a page on our website that details all of this. And there's also a post on LinkedIn that you can amplify. If you have a newsletter that you put out, or if you want text for an email, don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We can provide you with all of that material if you want to help spread the word. And would love to hear your feedback and ideas on how we can continue to maximize the reach of the dashboard in general and any ideas you have specific to the lesson plan. Okay, the next thing I'll highlight is that each year around September 1st, Cradle-to-Career shares a report with the legislature. And we post this publicly on our website. You can find it on the resources page of our website. It highlights our statutory obligations and the progress we've made in that prior fiscal year in achieving those. So especially if you're new to the advisory board, the Ledge Report is a great crash course in the work that we've done in the prior year and provides you with a nice overview. So Nice plug for the legislative report. I'm not going to walk you through the whole document, but if we can just go to the next slide. As I highlighted, this documents the progress made during the prior fiscal year. If we can go to the next slide, please. This visual highlights just a few of the by the numbers highlights that we put into the legislative report. So I just want to talk through a few of these. On the top left in the dark blue, you can see the number 11,000. And this reflects the number of high school seniors' voices that were captured in this past year's student experience report. As you may know, we're required in statute to do a student experience audit or student experience report each year. We partnered with our friends at the California Student Aid Commission in a survey that they put out to California's high school seniors and invited people to share their experiences of applying to college, of applying for financial aid, and then synthesize the lessons of what's working, what friction points are students experiencing in the student experience report. So we're really excited about that. If you look at the light blue in the middle, as I mentioned, the Student Pathways data story has 6 different pictures, and each of those is powered by 9,000 cuts of data. And this really emphasizes the most requested feature that we have heard for our dashboards and for our products in general, which is that people want to be able to disaggregate the data. They want to be able to break down the data and see, what does this look like for my community? So you can disaggregate by geography, you can disaggregate by student demographics and characteristics, and that's part of why we're so excited to have released the Query Builder as well. And the bottom left in yellow, you can see more than 67,000 people had visited the Student Pathways data story page as of August. So we're really excited about the take up on that. And in the top right, the tutorial videos that we made available are available in English and Spanish and have also gotten lots of engagement online as well. So people can have a really guided experience through that. The green and the purple boxes here around 30 new data points and that there were 14 task force members we convened is an exciting expansion of the data system. I believe I highlighted this when we met in the summer. This is the largest planned expansion of the data system to date. And we're really grateful for the collaboration of the Labor and Workforce Development Agency and its departments in working with us to bring lots of new data around workforce training participation and apprenticeship into the data system. So our team and our data partners teams have been really hard at work this fall in converting the high-level data point descriptions that our board voted on last May into really detailed file upload specifications so that that data can be ingested in the future. And that also highlights the new data providers who were added for that. Next slide, please. A couple of things I want to highlight here. Our partners at CCGI, the California College Guidance Initiative, are partnering with 436 districts and local education agencies to provide services at californiacolleges.edu. I'll highlight the box in the top right. As you know, more than 100 people applied for the open positions on this advisory board and the community engagement advisory board as well. So we're just so honored to be doing this work in the context of so many incredible practitioners and researchers and advocates wanting to be engaged in it. In the bottom left in purple, more than 600 people have participated in our virtual community conversations. These are less formal meetings we have with the public where they can give us ideas and input. And as just an example, before we released those flat files, we held community conversations to see, to share what we were planning and to get input and feedback on that. 61% of our contractors were certified small businesses. Highlighting also the number 21 and 32 is the number of governing board members and the number of advisory board members we have. And I'm happy to report that we, at the end of the fiscal year and currently have a 0% staff vacancy rate, which is important given that we have only 27 authorized staff positions here. So it's a tiny team doing all of the work of the data system. Next slide, please. All right, as I mentioned, and if you can go ahead to the next slide, Every August, the governing board, which directs our office's work, votes and approves a work plan for the upcoming fiscal year. And so you can find the fiscal year 25-26, the one we're currently in, on our website in the resources section. And it's a really ambitious work plan that will max out the effort of our 27-person team. So the way this is organized is you can look at the work plan. It has different pages. The screenshot you see here, this is way too small for you to read, but it's just to give you a sense of what the work plan looks like so that when you find the document, you know you're in the right spot. This is the page for analytical data for this year. And there's a page for our work on practical tools. There is a page for our operations. There's a page for our engagement. And the thing I want to highlight is that the purpose of this work plan is to share transparently with the public what are we working on this year and what are we prioritizing. And by construction, when we plan out our work, and as you think about the size of our team and the resources that we have available, new efforts beyond this require new resources. So I wanted to highlight that because part of what you're doing today is to bring your ideas for recommendations of how we can do our work, how we can strengthen our work, ideas for new things that the office or our data providers could do. And I just want to highlight that new ideas are phenomenal, and the timeline for how those can be implemented depends a lot on whether it's going beyond the work plan that we already have and whether it will require new resources, which, as you know, at the budget cycle, takes time and effort. So that's the work plan high level. If we can go to the next slide, the piece I want to highlight is really, what we're prioritizing in fiscal year 25-26, especially as it relates to your focus here on the Data and Tools Advisory Board. So we've onboarded a new maintenance and operation system integrator who's working with us for the ongoing work of ingesting data from our partners, linking it, and having a strong foundation of the data system itself, so that we can then continue to build tools like the Student Pathways Dashboard. So as I mentioned previously with the lesson plan challenge, that's just one example of the work we're doing to maximize the reach of the Student Pathways Dashboard. So that's a major priority for this year. We want to make sure that all of the effort that this collective community has put into creating that dashboard really reaches as many Californians as possible. A third priority for this year is releasing that first set of aggregated data files as phase 1 of the query builder, which we've already done now as of last month. So we're really curious to see how people use those resources and very curious to hear your feedback on that. In terms of new work, developing the data request process for researchers is a high priority for us this fiscal year. And the first step toward that is building a secure data enclave, if you will, a kind of sandbox that researchers can work within. This is going to be a lot of work on the data infrastructure side, on the legal side, with our partners, and in developing a process where we can, at scale, bring in research requests. So we're going to start small, build up towards that, pilot the process in a small way, and then continue to develop that with your input. We highlighted this more in the governing board meetings, so feel free to tap those resources. There's a new data report that the office can provide to the Student Aid Commission, that's what CSAC stands for, to support higher education segments and providing data to CSAC. They have the option of submitting that data through Cradle-to-Career. So our office is spending quite a lot of time on developing that with our data partners and together with the Student Aid Commission this fall. And we're also working with CalKids, the California Opportunity for Savings Accounts for young people, in bringing information together that can help provide outreach to people who may not yet have claimed their CalKids account. So these are our key priorities for the coming fiscal year. Next slide, please. I'd like to highlight a few updates related to the budget that was passed earlier this year. And there were a number of different bills and budget acts, so I just want to highlight which ones they are. So if you're interested, you can dig into those in more detail. So one is the first one called the Budget Bill Junior. This includes $1.5 million ongoing for a higher education coordinating body under GovOps. And then the Higher Education Trailer Bill includes investments related to the Master Plan for Career Education. Those are mostly in this trailer bill. That includes $25 million in Proposition 98 funding for the Chancellor's Office of the California Community Colleges to develop a career passport. And the bill also includes language that directs our office and the Labor and Workforce Development Agency to work to support the Chancellor's Office in this effort. So we've been doing a lot of work on that. The career passport is a proposed learner and employer record. The trailer bill also includes $6.5 million for the eTranscript California platform to support the development of that at the Chancellor's Office. And it also includes resources for credit for prior learning, another initiative of the Chancellor's Office that relates to the career passport effort. And then the Budget Act of 25-26 includes the annual budget of $23.6 million for the California College Guidance Initiative, or CCGI, which is an increase of $3 million ongoing in Proposition 98 funding. It also includes resources for our office related to the career passport. So we received one new ongoing position, as well as $500,000 one-time funds to support our work on the career passport. So that's a high-level update of some of the new investments in the last budget. Okay, so to wrap up, how can you engage with this work? A couple of ideas. One is we would love for you to share the lesson plan challenge, especially with educator communities, so we can get as much input on that as we can. We will be lifting up lesson plans that we receive on our website, so it's a great opportunity for shared learning there. You can help your community access and use the dashboard. There are a number of different ways, whether it is sending information out through listservs or hosting webinars or information sessions to help people learn about the dashboard and the questions they can answer with that. You can share ideas related to the priority projects in our work plan for this fiscal year. If you look at our work plan and you have thoughts and ideas on that, feel free to share those with us. And you can also share big picture ideas that could shape future years' work. So as you think about that, especially the last two bullet points, you might want to think about the trade-offs between advocating for new work and new ideas versus what would be helpful to our team in providing ideas on how we can be more efficient or enhance the work that's already prioritized in our current work plan. So as Ryan Estriato walks you through some of our projects this morning, that's really the heart of the first half of the agenda. Brainstorming ways that this work can be leveraged and how your expertise can really inform the work is why Ryan is sharing that work with you this morning. So wanted to close by just considering what ways you can engage with the work, and now I'd be happy to answer any questions or hear any reflections that you have on that.
If I could just interject quickly for a procedural matter. We did have a member Katenzadite, that is experiencing some internet issues. So just voicing over for the public, she may be off camera to save bandwidth. So that's good modeling of, things happen and we can roll with it. And yes, Marianne said this best. It's member questions, comments, and deliberation here. Please feel free to raise your hand and we'll get to you. Okay. It sounds like we might be ready to move on to the next agenda item then. Thank you so much, Marianne Bates, our Executive Director. A very informative update, and I think she laid a very good foundation of things that are to come in the next two agenda items, so much appreciated. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to move on to agenda item 5. And I would love to pass it over to Ryan Estriato, our Director of Data Programs, to lead us through this agenda item. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thanks, Mary Kate. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see everybody again. My name is Ryan Estriato, Director of Data Programs at Cradle-to-Career. And before I start, I want to give special thanks to our Research Data Specialist, Heather Daniels, for preparing this item so that I can share it with you today. And we'll start with goals. Today, we want to learn from you about 3 projects that we're working on. And here's how we'll do that. Before today's meeting, we asked you to answer discussion questions about the research request tool individually and on your own, about the research request tool, the query builder, and the secure data enclave. So those are the three projects we are working on that we're going to talk about today. And I want to thank you for taking the time to prepare by doing that. During this agenda item, we are going to use what you've prepared to spark discussion about each of these products. And then afterwards, the office will use what we learned from you today to inform our work on these projects going forward. Here's what you can expect from each of the three projects during this agenda item. First, I'll start us off by sharing a very brief update on each. Then after that, you'll have some time to add your responses to the member feedback document. And then finally, we will screen share that document so members of the public can see it while we lead you through conversation about each of the projects. Okay, advisory board members, thumbs up if you are ready to try this with us. All right, let's do it. Next slide, please. Yeah, that one. Thank you. Research request process. So this is the first. So I said at the start, we're going to do three projects. This is the first one, first of three. And here's the brief update. As part of our annual plan, the office is working on the first version of a research request process. And this process will give researchers with approved requests access to aggregated and also individual level data for their research. In previous meetings, previous public meetings, so that's previous advisory board meetings, governing board meetings, we've gathered feedback on initial versions of research request forms. So these are the forms that we envision in the future researchers will complete to give information and submit and request approval for data. So we've shared those forms in past meetings. And we've also shared our commitment to learning about and applying open science principles to the design of the research request process. Next slide, please. These are the titles of each of those forms. There is one for an expedited research request, which is that would result, if approved, in aggregated data. A comprehensive research request, which, if approved, would result in de-identified and individual level data that can be analyzed in our future secure data enclave, and then a draft data submission form, which is supposed to be for requests to add data from outside of the system as part of the research process. You can find these three draft forms in your packets for reference, and I encourage you to find those so that you can have them as reference while we discuss. Okay, that was the brief update. Now I will ask for you to please, we'll start the discussion, and I will ask for us to please share the feedback document. We are going to set a timer for 2 minutes. During those 2 minutes, I'd like for members to enter the notes that you took on this topic before the meeting into the Google Doc that we've provided. And please check your email for this Google Doc link. It will have come from Stephanie Gutierrez Valdez. Now the office will begin publicly sharing the document, and thank you, Cynthia, for starting that screen share now. There's the document. Are there any questions? I see one from Member Mehta. Go ahead.
I believe that I'm waiting on access to the document.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll work on that in the back end. And Ryan, thank you for verbally saying this also nicely. The emails have gone out. Is it appropriate? Ryan, are we good for me to start a 2-minute timer now?
Yeah, I want to make sure. Does Member Mehta have access now so she can participate?
Stephanie, if you could confirm that, please.
We are working on that right now.
Okay. Mary Kate, I think we're good to start the 2 minutes.
Okay. Members, just so you're aware of what's happening, I'm going to start the 2-minute timer. You'll see that on my box and also in the upper right-hand corner. Timer starting now.
Okay. Finish that last thought. I think of all the timers, the Zoom timer is easily the most pleasant alert. I'm sure you'll agree. Okay, the doc is up. And again, are the 3 prompts here, the 3 prompts for you to discuss. I'll just read them out loud. And then I will afterwards turn it over to Mary Kate to lead us through the member discussion. You are not limited to these prompts for the discussion, but feel free to use them if they help you. 3 prompts. The first is reflecting on what you've heard so far. What clarifying questions do you have about the forms that you can find in attachment A? The second prompt is, how does what you have heard so far about the research request process compare to what you have seen from other organizations in the field? And then final prompt, what are the risks that the office should be aware of as we continue to develop the research request process? We have our doc. Those are the 3 prompts. And now I will turn it over to Mary Kate to lead us through the member discussion.
Perfect. Wonderful. So saying this again, Ryan set this up very nicely. We're piloting a new strategy here where members have been able to write down their responses, and that's what's shown in front of us. And for members of the public following along at home, we will be sure to be scrolling continuously throughout the document so you could see other answers. Now, members, we also want us to engage verbally with the content that y'all just shared in writing. So I know folks probably have a lot of thoughts here. What I'd love to do is folks to start raising their hand. We have plenty of time to engage, so use your hand participation on Zoom. And then we'll start calling folks off and get a little queue started here. So I'm just waiting for folks to raise their hands. Wonderful. Mirtha, I'd love you to kick us off.
Yeah, this is just first of all, thanks to the office for preparing all the detailed documents. I think it's really great to have like actual artifacts to have this discussion. So really appreciate that. I think my biggest question coming from like a CBO, a community-based organization, just thinking about how daunting this could be for CBO partners and feeling like this is really catered to researchers and that to me really like screams as an equity issue, like who's actually going to access the info and use the info when this is really supposed to be for the people of California, right, broadly. So that was my biggest kind of like standout alert as I was going through all the documents and hoping that there's maybe some future thinking about, if I'm a CBO and want to request some data of my particular students, like how can I go about that if we're not a research team or a researcher doing IRB approved projects. So yeah, just want to start with that as a community rep on the board. And again, really appreciate all the resources, but that was my kind of biggest question.
Thank you so much. Ryan, I'd like to give you the opportunity if you want to respond, or we could move on to the next. I see another hand.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to try is hearing more questions. Mirta, thanks for that. I do have some follow-up, but let's hear more and see maybe the conversation will sort of build on itself.
Love it. Wonderful idea. Okay, thank you again. Oliver, I see your hand. Member Shack, please.
Thank you. I'm member Shack from Santa Clara County. And I think I'm just thinking about like what are my top questions. I think the number one thing that stood out to me is like what are the roles of different individuals who are involved in the process and being like super clear. So is there like a principal researcher and then maybe a team who are also authorized to access the data, kind of spelling that out. But then also like the data providers, in my experience, where there's been some tension, is that in theory the data are there, but then there starts to be a lot of back and forth of like, oh well, we want to make sure the data providers and the source where it comes from, they're the experts on the data, and we want them to be comfortable. And then kind of related to that, thinking through is a process more kind of like an application and then sort of a simple yes or no, or is it more of like a fluid back and forth? And do you see your office as sort of like a liaison or more of a kind of like approval or disapproval role? So I have many more thoughts, but I'll just leave it on that.
Thank you, Member Shack. And I see that there's plenty of hands stacked here. And apologies that I didn't see them in the order that they came up. So we're going to do this. We'll next go with Member Fong, followed by Member Unda, followed by Member Schmidt-Temple, and then we'll wrap up this queue with Member Reed. So Member Fong, please.
I think it goes the other order, Mary Kate Cruz, but
I'm keeping it zesty here, Member
okay,
Fong.
keep it zesty. Well, thank you so much, and thank you other members for letting me bypass and cut through. Ryan, this is very great. I think the last time you presented around the research request, I think maybe it was like one page and a few questions. I would like to echo some of the other members' concerns around it being really lengthy and a little daunting, actually. Even as somebody who is educated and going through the questions, I do feel a little bit overwhelmed with all of the different questions that are there. And so it would be helpful to know what is like the bare minimum that is required versus like the full request for research. And then it does make me question around once that data is provided, is it password protected? What is like the sharing capabilities once the data is shared with this group? And that just builds off of kind of Member Shack's question, I believe, right? Which is like, let's say I'm a local school team, like an English department, and I want to think through getting data for my school or whatever. And I didn't list, such and such department in emails. Is it possible for that person to be able to share the data widely then across their school, even if they weren't listed on the initial, research project? So those are my questions around the data.
If you don't mind, I'll just take that one. I've got a list of follow-ups here that I think I'd love to hear from the whole group about, and in particular the folks who had the feedback. But I want to address the question about access, since that's come up a couple of times. One thing that is almost certain is so a lot of this has to do with the level of data being shared on for an approved process, and in particular whether or not it is individual level data versus aggregated and suppressed data. And one thing we are fairly sure of at this point, for reasons I think you'll understand, is when we're looking at individual level data, even when it's de-identified, that will almost always certainly be worked on within our future secure data enclave, and then only for the people who are approved as outlined in the request. I know when that process plays out, there are more details that we have to hammer out, and I would love your input on that. What I think is more of an open question is what the allowable sharing will be for aggregated and suppressed data sets, which I would imagine would not be as restricted, though we don't have specifics on that yet. And what I'm learning here is that may be a place that we can explore more together for sure. So I just wanted to put that out there, and then I think we should continue on with the conversation, because I'm beginning to see some themes that I would like to sort of pull the thread on for a little bit. So I'll stop, and then back to you, Mary Kate.
No, that was wonderful. Thank you, Ryan. And I appreciate you interjecting when it felt right for you. Next, let's go to Member Unda, please.
Thank you, Mary Kate. Yeah, I think I'm going to echo many of the comments that my peers have shared already. I think what in my experience has happened, I've gone through the very technical, lengthy data request forms to something more streamlined, and that has helped also those who are going to have to go and review these data requests. It's a lot of work. I've done it myself, my team has done it, and that's why we ended up doing something much more streamlined. I'm happy to share, even though it's different context, but still I think that it could serve. The other thing that I thought is that there's definitely the equity issue. I cannot agree more with Mirtha about how do we make sure that this is something that anybody in California could use. There's also an issue with dissuading our requesters. Would they feel dissuaded because this is just too lengthy and too complex and so much information that I'll just not do it? And then the other thing that I thought is, have we thought as C2C which of these elements we really need them? Have clarity about what are the elements that we really, really need, and then we ask for those rather than asking so much from requesters. And my last comment has to do with, if this data request is very time consuming, could the requester go directly to the data provider? I do understand that many times they come to us because we have the power to connect databases and not work in silo, and that's probably one of the most important powers of C2C. But I thought, what if we compare these forms with the forms of our data providers and see how we are doing with those? What happens if they decide, okay, maybe I'm going to go and try with some of our data providers because that's less time consuming, and so on and so forth. So I also thought that it could allow us to benchmark if we go and look at their data requests, if they have them, and see how we can calibrate the form.
Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. Wonderful. Let's hear from Member Schmidt-Temple, please, next.
I'm actually, can I pass it to Member Reed? I know she's been waiting quite a while. So I'm going to pass it and I'll follow up.
Love it. Member Reed, please. Thank you.
Hi, and thank you so much. That's very kind. My comments were, these were in my original notes, but also building off of Member Ortiz-Verlar's comments. I'm also coming from a community-based organization that does evaluation, and I had a similar reflection that it appeared aimed at researchers rather than CBO research. I was previously associated with a university, so I've been on both sides of it. And I particularly noted the IRB approval questions. So I was wondering, it wasn't clear from the draft whether an IRB approval was going to be required for a comprehensive data request. And then I also noticed that under asking about IRB approval, there were only two kinds of IRBs listed. There was a CPHS or a person's own institution. And so I was wondering if those are the only two kinds of IRB approvals that would be accepted. So that jumped out to me. And then additionally, building off of other folks, one issue that my organization has had in using the student pathways data so far is the timeframes that are available. So I know we're limited by data providers. I know CDE doesn't have the most updated data, but I was wondering if there are additional time points that would be available through the request process that are not available on the public dashboard. Just wondering, so that would answer some questions in my own work. But overall, we've been waiting for the request process. We're excited about it and so happy to see it moving forward.
I could introduce that last one really quickly by saying that the vision for the research request tool, the process is that for approved research requests, data that is available in the system is what's available. So if we are in a situation where there are more years available in the underlying system, but in a more narratively driven product like the dashboards where we are looking at limited years, we are looking at less than what is available in the system itself, an approved research request, as long as the amount of years is specified in the research request itself and then approved, would be available in the system. And that could be a scenario where more years are available in the system where they wouldn't be viewable in a dashboard, for example.
That's exciting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Member Schmidt-Temple, University of California, Berkeley, CEP. I echo a lot of what I'm hearing, especially around CBO or like service-oriented organizations being able to utilize the research request process to follow up on evaluation and seeing how their services are impacting their students and improving their services. I'm really curious on how this product can be used to match whatever data that they're doing within their services to do that work. And it also pulls on a question that I've been having around prioritizing these different requests, right? Understanding that there's limited resources and people power within C2C. How is C2C then prioritizing, especially with the aggregated data requests where there's like real work that has to be done by C2C to aggregate those results and things like that? How are we picking and choosing which projects are aligning or are being worked on, and then how is the public being informed of that process and that priority as well, and then how are we doing it equitably to ensure that everybody has an equal chance, and it's not just the IRB folks, it's not just the research folks, it's everybody who has an opportunity to do that. And so I think that outlining that priority, and even if there is going to be a rubric on like what C2C has or can do versus what C2C can't do, right? Because understanding that there's a mission and vision behind C2C, and not that may mean that not every request gets fulfilled because of that, right? And so I think that prioritization and separately that rubric might be really important for, transparency for the public.
Thank you for that. Mary Kate, how are we doing on time? I'd like to pull on a couple of threads here, get a little bit more discussion going on some of the things that have been said. But I also know I just want to make sure I kind of help to keep us on track.
Yeah, that's perfect. I was thinking similarly. So we are about 25 minutes into this, which is great. We're doing okay with time. I was thinking we probably spent about 40 minutes on this topic. So feel free to pull more.
Okay.
And then thinking a step ahead, my invitation, because we've cleared to our queue of hands. I just want to invite members to also, we have a lot of written text that the C2C office staff is scrolling to share with the public, but I would love to invite members to feel empowered to unpack some of those comments, because on the other side of this for the public, it's a lot for them to skim and hear. So Ryan, please, we'll start with you and then take it from there, maybe with my next steps. Does that sound good for folks? I see
Great.
some nodding heads. Brilliant. Ryan.
Okay, so I'd like to briefly just give some context about the design challenges that we're enthusiastically up against here, and then I specifically want to hear more about what you are imagining or what you would imagine for a process that feels more streamlined. So just previewing, like let that percolate because I want to hear stories. But important context, and I'll just focus this specifically on individual level requests, which as a reminder would be worked on in the Secure Data Enclave, would be de-identified, but would be individual level. So rows unique by individual, which of course is needed if we're doing things like building models and stuff like that. So just focusing on that, one of the things that we have to balance is making sure that we have enough process to protect privacy in those situations against usability. It's always a little more complicated than that, but that's an underlying tension. So as with any underlying tension, it can be informative to look at the imagined results of each of the extremes of those tensions, where, for example, there wasn't enough process, then whether by accident or by bad intentions, there could be privacy problems, right? If there's not enough process in place. All the way on the other side of the tension is there is so much privacy in place, not privacy, there's so much process in place that getting through a research request becomes too difficult. So it's like those kind of two things. And that's sort of the balance there that we're trying to be the most careful about. Again, reminding this is very specifically about individual level data. Part of the solution to that, I think, will always be the question, is individual level data required for the request? And might the person requesting data be able to accomplish what they want to accomplish through faster processes like flat files that are already available on the website, or an aggregated and suppressed request, which would have less process? This kind of goes back, Member Shack, to one of your questions about what's the back and forth like between the office and the requester, and we're still trying to figure that out. What we know for sure is that approval has to come from the data partners. But one of the things that we're envisioning is having some conversation where if there is an opportunity to get data faster because what's needed is not individual and actually just aggregate and suppress, we think there should be some conversation about that. That's just good for everybody, both the requester and both for us and our bandwidth. So that's a sort of design tension. I think that's a good sort of context for us. And now I want to invite you to join me in pulling on this thread a little bit about the length of the individual request process form, and in particular for audiences who are not researchers and who are less or not accustomed to a form like that, including where appropriate requirements for IRB, et cetera. What I want to do is I would like to ask for a volunteer or more than one volunteer to sort of imagine out loud what that process could look like that is better balanced for a CBO or other kind of person. If what you were imagining actually exists. I would also love for you to share that with us so that we can look at it for inspiration. But it's okay if you can't think of anything out loud. I think in this type of design conversation, I am still very interested in even just what you were imagining so that we can kind of look at the parts there and see what's feasible. So that's my ask. Can I get a volunteer to share their imagination or an example of what a shorter research request form looks like, what it causes a user to think and to feel, and why?
I saw Member Tanzarite's hand first and then Member Milan. So let's take the two of you, and voicing over that Member Norris has some technical difficulties, so we may not see her on camera.
Yeah, and thank you, Ryan. I'm not sure I'm going to answer all the pieces of answer this question the way that you're asking precisely, but first I want to just acknowledge the member Cameron Schmidt. Sorry, I can't see the rest of your name. His comment about the balance of, and this is, I think, in some of the written comments as well, the balance between transparency and kind of managing expectations, and so that people aren't imagining that when they put in a request, like the C2C office is going to give them their data next week. And why? Like, what are the, what's the rubric? What determines timeline and all of that? So I think one possible modification is to have a different form for folks who are asking for aggregated data versus individual level data that would require the secure data protocols and a lot of other kinds of layers. I also see the form as creating a lot of work for C2C staff. There are a lot of open-ended questions. Like I feel like this is going to be a nightmare for you all on the back end. So I'm wondering if you might also think about a two-stage process where there's an initial application that kind of helps filter the direction that people are going, and then if they can then be pointed to a flat file, a query builder, something that already could answer their question, there's a different route for them. If they could be if their questions could be answered with aggregate level instead of individual level data, that there are some ways to help streamline the process for people who may not be that familiar with data requests, maybe submitting something far more complicated than is necessary. You're asking the applicant, the requester, to verify that this is the minimum number of data elements that they require. But I think that might be something that C2C staff determine. C2C staff look at the research question and say, okay, we think you can answer this question with half the number of variables that you've asked for, and this will speed up your request. So just a few thoughts to kind of help manage expectations, make a transparent process that's fair and reasonable, and also reduce the burden on C2C staff.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Member Mian?
Hi, I'm Member Mian from LA. Yes, definitely echoing a lot of these comments. And just after I scrolled through a lot of like the written text, agree that just offering like some examples of like this is what a research request, a completed one could look like. I think that would be helpful, even if some folks maybe are willing to share what they submit, offering templates, potentially making some of those questions optional, and potentially going back to the requester if those questions are truly needed. And then I think just overall, just based on like my own experience working with youth and trying to get them to understand and kind of learn how to use data, this could be more work up front for the office, but it could mean just having more tailored or like fuller requests, but potentially offering webinars, workshops about how to complete a research request, like what is an appropriate request, like what's an appropriate request, but what can you do already using dashboards, using data that's already on the website, and like how much more do you need to do why would you need to fill out a request, for lack of better words. So yes, like that could take a lot more work, but just having maybe some more of that information up front could be helpful. And I think just overall, potentially offering like a process map that includes a decision, like a decision tree of like why would the like how would the office, you know, review requests, like what does it mean, like what's a no, what's a yes, like kind of offering that upfront potentially so that it's more accessible, so that CBO staff researchers kind of know like what does this request look like, what's a timeline, like how long will it take for me to hear back, why might I receive a no, why might I receive a yes. So I think a lot of that kind of like education could be helpful. But yeah, so overall, just kind of echoing a lot of the ideas that I saw while I was reading through the document.
Thank you. It's helpful.
Okay, I see one more hand raised, and what I'm thinking at this time, looking at the clock, is let's go with Member Kana, and then let's maybe wrap up this section.
I think I'll be quick because I am going to reiterate most of what everyone has said, which is definitely putting a distinction between aggregate and individual data. So if you want aggregate, the timeline is such, as well as specifying not just the timeline, but these are the only questions you answer. All these additional questions that need to be answered is for individual data only, which will require this much of a timeline. So specifying both things, which is timeline of the data, but also complexity and why, will make it more transparent to others in understanding why all these 39 questions are required.
Okay, and I see one more hand now. Member Watson, please.
Just a quick comment. Seems like there will be a lot of pressure on the query builder as a versatile tool to solve a lot of these types of not individual student record kinds of questions. I mean, I'm very hopeful about the prospects for that tool to perhaps be able to respond to some of the CBO questions about having data to see impact. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think it was always part of the original vision that would help, that would help avoid a situation where too many requests were being funneled to the research request tool that could be solved in other ways. And so I think that's a real important observation. Before we move on, I just wanted to voice for the group that this is so helpful. And I'm just saying this because it's the first time we're doing it this way. And I want to share that what you are doing and what you were saying and the way that you were doing it is exactly what we need. And specifically because what I'm hearing are lots of details, which are important, but also themes around the usability of the forms, and importantly, how the building of the forms will have an effect on the way requesters will think and feel about the process as a whole, and how the transparency about the way we are thinking about this and the necessary work and reasonable expectations for when they could get data are all parts of how we can make the experience feel like something that folks want to do, but can also understand when, for sensitive data in particular, the process just kind of has to take longer. And so my mind is kind of going, just percolating on these ideas about how we can use transparency and being sensitive to those kinds of like thinking and feelings and reaction to the process, and how we can make adjustments to get more of the types of thoughts, feelings, and responses and trust that we want. All of that to say, this is so helpful. We've got 2 more of these to go. Please do the same thing because it's going to help us keep on going. Okay, back to Mary Kate.
Perfect. I did see one hand come up, but I do agree with Ryan. We are nearing the end of the time on section 1. So maybe if we have time at the end, Member Unda, we could come back to you on that thought. What I'd love to do, Ryan, if you could take us through section 2 now, please.
Yes, I will do that. Before I do that, I wanted to just check in with the staff. This is our first time doing it. Anybody want to jump in with other comments?
So I'd love to just provide a quick reflection from my perspective, and thank you, Ryan, for this conversation with everyone. One of the things that I'm hearing super loud and clear is the importance of managing expectations before rolling out a big process. And so, two takeaways from me. One is that I think it would be really crucial for us to frame anything related to research requests and the secure enclave as explicitly not something that's a wide open gate where, the 39 million people of California could expect to walk through that, right? That's what the dashboards are for. That's why we're putting effort into putting aggregated data files online, because these will, by definition, take a lot of time from the requester, from our staff, and from our data providers. So I think framing this not as something that anyone in California should be able to do, but rather a very tailored thing for specific detailed research studies could be helpful. And then lifting up the dashboards and the flat data files as the alternative that anyone can access on our website will be really important. The other thing that our team has been thinking about, and I just want to lift up, is the importance of piloting this in a small way before opening it up in a public way. Because some of your very good points, I'm like, what's the timeline? The answer is, if it hasn't been done before, we can't estimate the timeline directly, right? So piloting, for example, I think will be really important before we open this process openly. So just wanted to share those two reflections that I heard, and really heard some of those messages loud and clear and appreciate the input. Back to you, Ryan.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, 1 down, 2 to go. We will now use that exact same process for this next part, which is going to be about phase 1 of the query builder. So you'll recall by looking at our annual work plan that we have an item on there that is to provide the public a way to analyze the dashboards, underlying student pathway dashboards, underlying data more directly than downloading it from the dashboard page itself. And this is important because it's a step towards what we envision to be a more fully featured and interactive query builder. And having aggregated and suppressed data sets available to download empowers the public to do research for projects that, as we discussed in the last discussion, doesn't require a full individual level data request. The first phase of the query builder provides our users the ability to disaggregate the data by district and demographics. And for this new web page, the office prioritized usability, accessibility, and alignment with the existing C2C website. While feature enhancements will introduce more interactivity and customization, we hope that this first step lays the groundwork for broader access and engagement with underlying data. Okay, so previewing for Cynthia that I'm going to ask here to begin the screen sharing for this next part. And just like the first section where we talked about the research request process, we also for this section asked you to respond to discussion questions individually before this meeting. And we'll again give you 2 minutes right now to copy and paste your feedback into the shared doc. And the office is now sharing that document. So over to Mary Kate to start us on our 2-minute timer.
Timer has started. Okay, 2-minute timer is up.
Okay, the timer is up. We have the document shared on the screen, and I will read out loud prompts for you to discuss. Reminder, we are relying on you primarily to go to what you have written to share your thoughts and spark discussion, but also we have these prompts that we hope will help. So we have 2 of them. The first one is reflecting on what you have heard so far. What clarifying questions do you have about the first phase of the query builder? That is the first prompt. And then second, what are the risks that we should be aware of as we develop this product? So 2 prompts for you if you need them. And now over to Mary Kate to lead us through member discussion.
Wonderful, perfect. I'll give folks a moment to get their hands raised. I do want to say that I do see Member Schmidt-Temple and Member Chook both have their hands raised, so we'll take them in that order. And I was thinking 20 minutes total for this item, so hoping to wrap up now in the next 15 minutes here. I see a third hand, Member Ortiz-Villar. So we'll start with you, Member Schmidt-Temple. Go in that order of the 3, and please.
Thank you. For this item, I understand that, there was a lot of there's a lot of requests from the community to get the underlying data that powers the student pathways dashboard. And I'm curious on kind of what the original conception of that query builder was, specifically in complementing the request tool, because as I think Member Watson said earlier, a lot of folks, if we are going to be pushing them towards the query builder tool in instances where that's more appropriate, then that means data has to be in there, right? And right now, those flat files are great for the student pathways dashboard, but that's also very specific data. And so just curious on like maybe the original conception or the future conceptions on that, how that plays into the 12-month plan on building the request tool before maybe more data is put into that query builder. And I also think there's probably a proposal in a later agenda item that we might want to then pay attention to because of that. So that's my comment.
Thank you, thank you. All right, Member Chook, please.
Member Chuk, I am mostly concerned with small n samples and whether the data through different layers of now, like the different data that can be pulled, that researchers or community members can manipulate it or do it in a way where it becomes identifiable data. So I think just recognizing we have lots of data sets and how do we make sure we protect the data in ways that is safe for the individuals whose, the data points are there.
Yeah, member Ortiz Villar. I'm a data director at Students Rising Above. Forgot to introduce myself the last time I spoke. But I think similar to member Tina's, like your comment, I think on the flip side, finding a balance for communities where their data is only suppressed because they're so small. And so like for those folks, if they can't access data through the query, like now they have to go through the research request process and if they don't have the teams to do that. So they're just kind of trying to find a balance between um, how do we get folks that might need the suppressed data what they need without having to go through all the hurdles that we spoke about in our last discussion. I think secondary to kind of this comment, also thinking about, do we have access to see like who's downloading the queryability data? Like really curious to see like regionally where are folks accessing data? And then if in the future we can have a process for folks sharing like best practices on how they're using this data. So like a kind of a report back for folks on, I use this data as a CBO and I use it in this way, or I'm a school district and I use it in this way. So just trying to like kind of share more resources. And again, like kind of thought partnering across the state of how we can use this data for all the different work that's going on across the state.
Wonderful. Thank you. And since we finished we got through that queue, Ryan, I want to check in. Would we like to I see 4 more hands raised. Do we want to keep going down that line?
Yeah, I think so. Only because, like the last time, I think as the conversation builds, it helps me prioritize like what threads to pull given the time that we have. All of it is valuable, and I am furiously taking notes, I assure you, to analyze later. But I would love to hear more.
Love it. Brilliant. Fabulous. Thank you. Okay, so I see 4 more hands raised. So let's go with member Unda, followed by member Shak, followed by member Tarasova, followed by member Fong. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, I forgot to introduce Viviana Unda, Community College area. Trying to add some things that I have not said before. So building on what Mirtha was saying, some advanced users may want to merge databases. How do we ensure that users are doing that correctly? How do we educate them so that data sets are not misread, because that could lead to inappropriate policies or inappropriate program recommendations. So I think that education piece is fundamental, so that, and I don't know the purview of C2C, if do we have to get there, but I'm a little bit curious about how are we making sure that these data sets are used appropriately. The other thing that I was thinking is related to how fast are we updating our data sets, right? I have, at least in my experience, whenever I get, and everybody who works with data knows this, that we're always kind of a year late and 2 years late, and you get to executive leaders, I want the thing from last year. It's like, well, it takes some time, like they don't know what it takes to push data. So I was also thinking about that the query builder, from what I saw, could be perceived as outdated to inform decisions if it is not updated with more recent data. And I don't know if there's already a plan for that, and actually that's going to be taken care of. Would we focus more on longitudinal studies rather than thinking about it as a tool for decision making if we're not going to have so updated data? That's kind of the other piece that I think it has not been brought up yet. And one more thing, so I leave some space for my peers to comment as well. I have a little bit of an obsession with definitions of variables, and I didn't see anything, and Ryan is smiling, anything really like what constitutes first-time college enrollment, how is time to degree measured? I'm just reading from my notes. What counts as working while enrolled? Because those definitions are just so key, so that whenever we're using that data, we are founding our basing our thoughts and our reflections on those variables, and those definitions are just fundamental to get where we wanted to get. So that's another piece. And finally, are we saying somewhere how clean or messy the data is? Are we communicating very transparently to what extent our data is accurate? So that, again, if we have a lot of gaps, so then, we can't make, so it's not so generalizable conclusions and so on and so forth. So that's another piece that I was, and it's all written there, right? And so you can go back but those are my ideas for now. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll just say really quick, you may have seen this already, or others may have seen this or not. So I think it's worthwhile to say it here. In each of the flat files, there is a downloadable data dictionary. It also may be the case that the data dictionary doesn't have information that y'all feel like it should have there. I would love to hear more about that. Probably not here because we have to reserve the time for the query builder, but please, as with any of our products, if there's a blind spot that we have, we want to hear about it. And then when we hear about it, we look at all of that information to prioritize which changes we think will be most impactful for folks. But that process starts with us hearing about it. So have a look at the data dictionary if you haven't already, and if you feel like there are parts of that that we can improve, we would love to hear that. Okay, that's my little bit.
Member
Yes,
Shack, please.
I'll go next. I'm Oliver Shack from Santa Clara County. And yeah, I think there's kind of two threads I want to pull on. One is just thinking about the audience and the users for this tool. I would encourage you to think about people who are kind of like informed about the domain space, but not necessarily researchers. And I'd really encourage, in the design, lots of user testing, kind of like a dashboard that is more customizable, a little bit more technical context. Also, I think one question I had was like plans for tools that allow for easy sharing of information that people pull, being able to, like, let's say, create PDFs or share links. I think all that kind of functionality I've used a lot, bookmarking reports that you think are high impact. And then sort of the second thread, which I think a number of members have mentioned, is that there's this real tension of, like, let's say you have a small cell size, a high degree of uncertainty, to what extent do you just display everything that is possible versus suppression? And there's this trade-off between, you don't want to sort of erase all small subgroups, but at the same time, you don't want to mislead people if there's a high degree of uncertainty. And I think where I would sort of lean is, if there's not a privacy consideration, display all the data that you can. However, if there is a high degree of uncertainty, providing context and some very prominent warnings about, hey, this estimate has a high degree of uncertainty, because, and I like the Power Stats tool. They add like exclamation points to that, because I've definitely seen small cell sizes lead to kind of high stakes decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would love if you could put that example in the written document. That would help us. Thank you.
This is Member Tarasova, ERP analyst. I just want to commend the C2C group, and I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that was put behind this initiative and the effort to make these data sets as useful and as accessible as possible. One thing that I'm curious about is whether the dictionary, I think that's the term that we're using, can be automatically provided along with a downloadable file so that users don't need to access it separately. Additionally, to build on Member Unda's comments, I also wonder if there is a plan to implement version control. So that would help our users to know exactly which iteration of the data set they're working with and track any changes or updates over time if they are consistent with pulling the same type of data. And lastly, building on the comment made by Member Ortiz Villar, that CDC could benefit from gathering insights on who's pulling the data, but also it would be great to hear more about how feedback from early users will be gathered, evaluated, and prioritized for future development. This seems like a really valuable way to ensure that the next round of improvements still align with the user needs and enhance the overall impact of the tool.
Member Fong here, Ryan and team, I want to say again, thank you so much and congratulations for launching this query builder and the student pathways dashboard. It is very exciting to see that there have been more than 600 users who've used it since launch. Again, to build on and echo what some of the other members have said, I think it would be really interesting to see if you all have that data of who's engaging, where regionally are they engaging, and when. If there's a time snapshot, that would be really helpful. And then just I don't know. Like other websites that you can go on, some websites have cookies where they remember where you've left off or what you've searched in the past. And so being able to give nudges maybe to users in the past who've used, that'd be great. I did have a question around, is this what you had hoped for in terms of the numbers who've used the launch, or not? And then whether we'd want to set this as a benchmark. And then, sorry, y'all, I have a lot of children here. And then the last question that I have is again on accessibility. It's not a question, more of like an offering. I know that we can download the data as like CSV and Excel, but I'm just thinking about some of the access that people might have on their computers or laptops or whatever. And if they're thinking about building visuals or charts, it might be easier to actually do screenshots or snapshots or download it as PNGs or JPEGs. So not sure if that's possible, but would love to see that if it is.
Hi, member Yi here, just jumping in. I'll be brief, but I'm really glad about all the feedback that it seems like is going around. I think I want to reiterate a little bit of what Oliver was saying, in the sense that I want to keep in mind who the users are and audiences. So kind of having something in the query builder that's kind of like a history tab. I know when you export data on like IPIMS or FRED, there's usually like a history tab, and being able to maybe like amend that, I don't know, like something like akin to like a string, of being able to send that to other people so that they may modify that for their own, respective audience of what organization or populations that they're going to be interested in, just for the sense of like reproducibility and shareability. I think that would go a long way. And yeah, that's my comment.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Ryan, please.
I was just going to thank everybody for sharing. Okay, so just like last time, I know I have so many questions. I think if we had like forever time, I would definitely be following up with a lot of stuff to hear more of what you were imagining and trying to learn from that. But just like last time, I think I've got to pick and choose here. So the first thing is an invitation. I think what would really help us, and I'll tell you in a moment why I think this would help us. But I want to invite you to, if some of you have offered examples, I heard Fred, I heard other ones. If you can add that to the document, and crucially, this might be the most important part, write a phrase or a sentence that gives us a some understanding of what it is about that particular site that you like. Maybe you feel like it hits the balance properly between suppression and showing more data. Maybe the workflow to download both the underlying data set and the data dictionary is like that feels right to you. That really, really helps us. And I'll tell you sort of why that helps us is one of the what we do with the information from conversations like this is we look at the patterns of the feedback, which usually comes in the form of a bunch of different ideas, and we try to understand the themes that are coming up about the way our products are built in their current state. And then in understanding that and looking at really specific examples, we then begin to brainstorm and prioritize improvements to those products that can reflect back what people are seeing and experiencing. So the more that we have about your initial reactions, which you got a lot of those today, the better for us. And again, crucially, I'll repeat it just because it's really important. The more that we can see examples that help illustrate the pain points and solutions that currently exist, that all gets thrown into the blender of the C2C kind of design analysis and helps us. So in your documentation, please, if you can, include that. And I think that'll be really helpful. Okay, so here's the question I want to ask. I want to hear more about the part. Okay, so let me think how to phrase this on the fly here in a way that's useful. So we have this first version of the Query Builder. It's the student pathway dashboard, underlying data sets. It's largely for the most part the same as what you can get on the student pathway dashboard, except for all in one place, plus an additional column for LEA code for matching, if you're matching to other data sets. And one of the themes that I'm picking up on is where we go next from here in terms of the other data sets that we make available. And I'm curious, based on your direct experiences in the areas that you work or what you know of from other users who would use this tool. So not necessarily researchers looking to build models or something like that, who usually are working in individual level data, but folks who primarily work in aggregated data. You all know pretty well, I think by now, the domains of data that we have, and I would love to hear about what you think would be the most useful to add to the system. And I want to be clear, this is not, I can't promise that we would add exactly what we hear today, but going back to the way our design process works, we learn a lot from what's on your mind and in your imagination about what you would like to see available. So I would like to open the floor just to hear your thoughts on that. So I'll just repeat that question again. If we could expand the flat file section to another domain, what is the first domain that comes off the top of your head to you as a thing that would get help?
Member Schmidt Temple, UC Berkeley CEP. I have a follow-up, Ryan, and it's around like the challenge of, when we look at the data elements PDF, we see the data that's been provided by the different data providers already. And I guess, are there challenges, like what are the challenges in putting those data elements into the query builder kind of as you have them? Because I'm curious on the choosing of one versus like we have this data that's been collected and maybe there's structuring challenges around like the P20 system versus like how it's displayed. So I guess I'm curious on that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's there's the what I think of as like the procedural challenge, which is not all of the data in the system, for a variety of reasons, it can be available for the query builder. So if you look at this point, we have like hundreds and hundreds of data points. And so one of the kind of procedural challenges, we have to make sure first that the participation agreement allows us to share it, and then also that past discussions from the planning process align with what we can share. So there's sort of that element. I know that's not exactly what you're talking about, but I think it's important to just kind of know there's like a couple of levels here. There are just some data points that carry enough sensitivity that the planners, all the way back in 2021 were like, I think this maybe should be available at the research individual level, but only in the secure data enclave and not anywhere else. So that's kind of one element. The next part is kind of I think like from a technical standpoint, so it's kind of a non-problem for us, which is it's true that that when we make underlying flat files available to the public, like we did with the student pathway dashboard, once there is a design process that is not about usability, but is about the structure of the data so that it's the most intuitive that we think it could be for somebody who's going to make charts or something out of it. And so there is some like phase of transformation out of the data warehouse into the format that we think is going to be the most useful. But for the most part, we can do it in any number of ways, and I don't really see that as a particular barrier. What could be a barrier, though, is how well we understand the way folks in general want that data to be structured. And I think it's important to say it that way because if you or anybody else has feedback about, hey, I usually like to use things in a long format and here's why, or a wide format and here's why, or unique at this level and here's why, I don't want for folks to have to consider what it takes to transform that because I hope my team doesn't kill me for saying this, but I don't think that is really the challenge here. It's more about understanding what's going to be the most useful. And for the most part, we can transform and make it available in a number of different formats. Of course, knowing that we kind of have to balance over a lot of different users and kind of folks want them in different ways. Let me stop right there. Cameron, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, I'm glad.
So Ryan, quick time check here. We have one more section and we are hoping to wrap up this agenda item in the next 10 or so minutes here. So I would suggest we move on to the last section.
That sounds good. As I did for the last one, before we move on, I would like invite on the C2 side to see if anybody else has anything to say before we move on.
Hi, good morning, members. This is Shannon Serrato, Director of Engagement. I just want to follow up on a comment or a question from member Ortiz Villar, specifically about making sure that we know who's accessing the query builder. I believe this is feedback that you provided last time, so I just want to share that on the page itself, we have demographic questions that ask about the roles that people are working in and the region that they live in that we're collecting when folks share that information with us. So just want to acknowledge that we hear you and we're trying to implement your feedback where we can. And then also want to tease out a comment because I know this came up again about data literacy and thinking about how folks can access some of this work. We also heard last time that there was an appetite to think about a community of practice, folks who may be the sole data person on their team or in their region and their district. And so we're working through that. I also know that there are some folks on this line who have expressed interest in that. And so this is a teaser for Community Engagement Advisory Board meeting that I will be fleshing out that bit. But if you all have thoughts about that as Data and Tools Advisory Board members, I probably will just follow up with you to get your thoughts on that as we work through that, because we are hoping to make this a reality, and we'll be glad for your feedback and participation. So just want to name those two things. We hear you all the time, loud and clear, and just want to make sure that you know that your feedback is actually getting implemented. So thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Really appreciate that.
Okay, so that is 2 of the 3 discussions wrapped up, and we'll now move on to the third and final. And this one's exciting because I don't think we have yet given discussion time to this particular topic, which is the secure data enclave. So let me just find my way back to my notes here. Okay. All right, so let's start the third topic. In our annual work plan, you'll see there that we've committed and have started already work on a secure data enclave where researchers can analyze individual level data for approved research requests in a secure compute environment. And the data programs team and also the data infrastructure team, as we speak, are defining the scope of the data tools that one would use within the secure data enclave, including statistical programming tools. And the office is also identifying a set of candidate users to pilot the secure data enclave. So Executive Director Bates earlier mentioned that in an effort to make sure that we keep the scale at a level that we can both deliver and learn about whether this first phase of the project is what it needs to be. We are limiting in this first year the folks who could do research within the secure data enclave before we open it up to more people. And a large part of that is figuring out a reasonable process that will allow us to learn about whether or not we are building sort of rises to the expectations that we have. So we've started work. In particular, we are looking at the features of the secure data enclave and the tools that we want to include there, and also beginning to think about the design of what the limited sort of launch would look like. Okay, next slide, please. Previewing for Cynthia that I'm going to be asking in a moment to share the screen. And just like in the previous topics, I'm going to again give you 2 minutes now to copy and paste your feedback into our shared doc. We'll start sharing that doc right now.
The timer is starting, and I can see that we're on the Secure Data Enclave section of the document. Fabulous, wonderful C2C team. Members, please start putting in your answers. Thank you. As members are doing that, just please.
Sorry, this is Member Catanzarite. Ryan, I wonder if you could give us a little bit of a review or a little more insight into what you're imagining for the Secure Data Enclave.
Mhm.
I couldn't remember how much detail you had given us, so that made this question a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
Are we talking about a physical space in Sacramento? What exactly, could you give us just a little idea of what is in the works?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. There is intentionally not a lot of detail here because of where we are at in the process, but I could see that I gave almost zero detail and I could see what's the problem. Let me answer your question very directly. What we are envisioning here and the most likely outcome here is a virtual secure data enclave. So that would be folks in who have an approved research request would receive credentials to log into a virtual environment where they can look at and analyze de-identified individual level data per the approved research request, run their analysis through the use of code, possibly because of open science principles that we're trying to adhere to, pre-registered code, and then the output of that code would then be reviewed to leave the system. But of course, as is the point of the secure data enclave, the individual level data would never leave. So the researcher would exit the system with the output of their data that they would then begin to write up. Does that help? Okay.
Okay, I'm going to continue with the timer. And then just a quick procedural remark. So any public attendees, we will be opening up for general public comment during agenda item 8, and we'd love to hear your thoughts then. That's the timer.
Okay. All right. This is the last one. Give me a thumbs up, please. If you're still with me, this is the last one. We're almost there. Just like the previous topics. Oh, sorry. We went through that already. Okay. So we have one prompt. So you've added doc shared, you've added your notes. And just like for the previous topics, we also have a discussion prompt that you can use if it helps you. That prompt, we have one for this one, is what are the risks that we should be aware of as we develop and roll out our secure data enclave? And now over to Mary Kate to lead the discussion.
Wonderful. Members, please feel free to raise your hand. I got to get this timer stopped. I do want to note that we are trying to wrap up this section quite quickly here. So we could probably take 1 or 2 verbal comments and then we'll close the session. Thank you. Member Yi, please.
Yeah, so I know you mentioned making this a virtual environment that's secure. I hear you when you say that you would have probably some type of check to make sure that this we can access this data. I would say a suggestion there would be
if someone has done like a federal background check for special sworn status for something like the Census Bureau or even working at a government agency, that maybe using that as kind of something that could expedite what would be, I imagine, the background check for users for this enclave to think about that as well, just so it's a one less thing that you guys have to do independently, I would say.
Thank you. While people are thinking, I would like to repeat my request from the last two, which is if you have used a secure data enclave, I would love to know which you used, like where you used it, which organization, and if you know that organization had a like particular product they use, which one. But crucially, what it is that sticks out to you as a thing that really worked with that. You don't have to share that here now, but if you can think of anything, we would love to know.
I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'm just going to do a final call and wait 5 more seconds. Okay. Thank you, members. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate this. We got a ton of feedback. I want to just voice over some things. At the top of the day, we heard our executive director, Marianne Bates, share with us that we have this work plan that we're focusing on. And Ryan, we just spent over an hour, probably close to an hour and a half, talking through 3 separate things that make a large part of this year's work plan. So members, thank you so much for your input, for your engagement, and for your wonderful ideas, because you're really helping shape the work that we're doing here at the office. We really appreciate it. It's 12:05. What I would love to do is I would love to stop for a break. My thought is we could take a 10-minute break, so come back at 12:15. We will start promptly at 12:15 because the next thing up on deck is that proposal process, and we're going to have a really hearty deliberation in there. So we need to give ourselves as much time as possible. Return in 10 minutes, please, members. If you are a new member, so I'm thinking about member Kana, member Yi, member Unda, member Chook, member Temple Schmidt, and there's one more member here. Please, everybody else turn off your cameras. Member Mehta, of course. And then you 6 folks, leave your cameras on. And what we'd love to do is pull down that slide deck. And I'd love everybody to face your cameras, give us your biggest, brightest smile, because our Deputy Director of Communications is gonna not be happy if I don't get a photo of all 6 of you today, because we'd love to put this on social media. So if we could bring that slide deck down momentarily. And I'm missing a member. Oh dear. I'm missing member Yi.
It's all right.
Yay, perfect. Thank you so much. Oh, I'll take down my video too. Shannon Serrato, please, can you confirm if we have a lovely looking photo?
We do. I'm going to take a photo now. Okay, hold one more second. Beautiful. All right, perfect. Thank you all.
Yay, thank you. See you back at 12:15. Thanks, folks. All right, thank you. Welcome back. Hopefully everybody had a nice break. We'll now be moving on to agenda item 7. excuse me, agenda item 6. I'm jumping ahead. Perfect. For this agenda item, I will be presenting. I'm again Mary Kate Cruz-Jones, Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships, and I will be presenting along with Ana Luz Gonzalez Vasquez, who is our governing board liaison. And what I'd love to do right now is pass it over to Ana Luz to begin this presentation. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary Kate Cruz-Jones. Good afternoon, advisory board members. Again, I'm Ana Luz Gonzalez Vasquez, and I'm the governing board liaison to the Data Tools Advisory Board. So what I would like to do now is to take a quick moment to provide an overview of the Data and Tools Advisory Board proposal process. Can you go to the next slide, please? The statute defines the responsibility of the Data and Tools Advisory Board as examining whether the data system is providing actionable information and identifying ways to improve access to that information. According to the governance manual, the Data and Tools Advisory Board can address a significant gap via the proposed process by recommending changes to the data request process, changes to the tools such as dashboards or operational tools for students, and adding additional data points to the P20W data system. The governance manual also specifies how the proposal process works in practice. As you can see here from the graphic on the slide, the annual cycle is organized into 4 key phases, each with distinct milestones to guide the advisory board's work throughout the year. You'll see highlighted in green on the slide that in May, the process reaches its culmination as 2 advisory board members and the Data and Tools Advisory Board liaison will present a report to the governing board highlighting connections among the proposals and to the work plan. We can go on to the next slide. Now I'll share a quick summary of key developments in the proposal process. Since we met last in July 11th, the joint advisory board meeting, members had the opportunity to submit their own proposal forms. They submit a joint proposal form with no more than 5 data tools advisory board members, sponsor a proposal form submitted by members of the public with no more than 2 data and tools advisory board members, and further refine a proposal form submitted by members of the public or a data and tools advisory board member from a previous year. All the Data and Tools Advisory Board member proposals were due to the office on Friday, August 22nd. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So this process resulted in the office receiving about 4 proposals from Data and Tools Advisory Board members, and you can see those proposals on the slide. Each proposal is included in today's staff report, and it's also available in the proposal repository on the C2C website. And I know there's a lot to discuss, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mary Kate Cruz-Jones so that we continue with this discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ana Luz Gonzalez Vasquez. I would like to start off by grounding members in what to expect at today's meeting. This agenda item is broken up into 3 distinct sections. So after this high-level overview that we were just provided, we will go into member proposal presentations. Presentations are 10 minutes each, and this includes time for both the presentation and member questions. During these presentations, member will notice a Zoom timer. We've already tried out this timer 3 times today, and this is a tool that will help us stay on time. Thank you for your understanding. I just want to make it a little bit more clear. So members that are presenting get to use their time as they wish, and therefore it is at their discretion if we will actually have member questions at the end. It's going to be a hard stop at that 10-minute window. After all members have presented their proposals, we will then open it up for public comment. And after public comment, members will have the opportunity to engage in member deliberation, which will be facilitated by Kathy Booth from West Ed. Kathy Booth, thank you so much. I see that you're on the line with us here today. Today, member deliberation will be divided into 2 key sections focused on how proposals complement and contrast, as well as which proposals are most promising for advancing C2C's ability to provide actionable information. And on this next slide, we'll take a look at this member proposal workbook. So to support members in preparing for deliberation, the office provided members with two key resources. The first resource was the proposal rubric. Members looked at that last March, and the rubric defines the criteria for strong recommendations. In addition, members also received a member proposal workbook, which is both of these items are in the staff report. And the member proposal workbook was to help members organize their thoughts and reflect on key questions before the meeting in order to actively engage in this really hearty discussion y'all will have after the proposal presentations. The workbook has three key sections. The first looks at the individual proposals and allows space for overview and reflections. The second is a Venn diagram comparison chart, and the third is a big picture reflection chart. Now, again, during today's two-part member deliberation, members are expected to share their reflections from the workbook. So the first part of member deliberation will focus on that Venn diagram. And then the second part will take a look at the reflections y'all gave in that big picture reflection chart. And I will say that the office, so specifically, I want to give a shout out to Stephanie Gutierrez Valdez for her wonderful work on this. The questions embedded throughout the workbook take into account what the rubric holds. So we tried to make that really helpful for you all. Ultimately, the goal of today's member deliberation is to inform the proposal report that will be presented at the Spring Data and Tools Advisory Board meeting. So let's take a look at the next steps. Thank you so much. Following today's meeting, the office will conduct a light touch feasibility write-up of all the member proposals. Additionally, the office will be looking for 2 members, this is really important, to volunteer to work with Dr. Ana Luz Gonzalez Vasquez to draft the report that will include 3 main components: links to all the member proposals, a summary of today's discussion, and the office's light touch feasibility write-ups. So if folks are interested in being considered, please submit a statement of interest to me no later than Friday, October 31st or Halloween. And I want to emphasize here that should we not receive 2 volunteers to draft this report, there will be no proposal report that is presented and discussed at the March meeting. And therefore, there will be no report that is provided to the governing board members. Now, I want to share with all of you a thought. Members can step up and step down in different ways. We have 6 folks that are presenting today, and we have a 16-member advisory board here with us today. My strong suggestion would be there's 10 other folks that haven't yet volunteered, so you might consider volunteering to write this report because it's a really important one, and I only need 2 of you. So that being said, we'll hear from our first member proposal, and that will be Member Catanzarite. So let's get you started. Sorry, I'm going to get my timer started. Member Catanzarite, are you good to go?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry, are you going to show my slides?
Please, yes, please begin. It will be the next slide. There we go.
Thank you. Member Catanzarite, President of Prismatic Research and Strategy. And I'm going to provide an overview of the proposal to strengthen teacher workforce insights by adding pathways and placement data into the C2C data system. Next slide, please. And I just want to start by acknowledging EdTrust West and Teach Plus California for crafting the public proposal. I also want to recognize 2 earlier related proposals authored by former DTAB member Dr. Lisa Chavez and the other proposal by Wendy Threet from Teach Plus. And finally, I'd like to thank both Dr. Chavez and multiple members of the Los Angeles Educator Pathways Partnership who lead the key LA area teacher training programs for vetting this current proposal. Next slide, please. So we know that California faces persistent teacher shortages and misassignments, and we know that those directly threaten student learning and opportunity, with students in underserved areas being disproportionately affected. While we know the problem exists, significant data gaps make it difficult to fully understand exactly who is impacted, where the issues are most acute, and which programs are most effective in addressing the shortages. Next slide, please. This proposal directly supports C2C's mission and vision by adding teacher workforce data by adding teacher workforce data, the system can enable stronger evidence-based decisions, surface equity gaps in access to qualified teachers, and help strengthen education to employment pipelines. Just by way of reminder, I've put a couple blurbs from the mission and vision statements at the bottom of the slide, but I won't read those. Next slide, please. Thank you. So C2C already houses some valuable metrics on teacher credentials and employment, but those data do not show whether schools are fully staffed, whether teachers are properly prepared and assigned, or whether pathway programs are effectively addressing the shortages. The key missing pieces are vacancy data, assignment outcomes, and linkages between pathways and long-term teacher workforce outcomes. Next slide, please. By adding the proposed metrics, C2C could support a number of important research questions, and I'll just go through some. On vacancies, which regions and communities are most impacted? Which student subgroups attend schools with the highest vacancies? And how do those vacancies shape student outcomes? On assignments, what share of teachers is fully credentialed versus out of field or misassigned? And how do these rates vary by region and subgroup? And of course, how does access to fully prepared teachers affect student achievement? On pathways, which programs produce the most teachers in high need areas? And how effective are state initiatives like the Teacher Residency Program, the Classified Employee Credential Program, or the Golden State Teacher Grant? How effective are those initiatives in recruiting and retaining teachers where they're needed the most? Next slide, please. Thank you. So here are the data elements that are being proposed. The California Basic Educational Data System, data on estimated teacher hires and needs by subject and region. For assignments, the Teaching Assignment Monitoring Outcomes data, which track assignment status and allow disaggregation by teacher, race, and ethnicity. And for pathways, data from the annual Teacher Supply Report, program completion data, and outcomes from state-funded grant programs. Importantly, these data are already collected by the California Department of Education, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and the California Student Aid Commission. Our proposal is about integrating existing partner data into the C2C system. Thank you. So I want to just show a couple of examples. This is an example of the TAMO data, the Teacher Assignment Monitoring Outcomes, showing access to fully prepared teachers, showing that it varies substantially between schools with low versus high concentrations of low-income students. The equity gaps by subject area are on the order of 9 percentage points for history, that's the second set of bars, up to 12 percentage points for science, the penultimate set of bars. Next slide, thank you. So this shows an example of the TAMO data, of the teacher assignment preparation data from C2C. It shows on the left the numbers and on the right the percentages of underprepared teachers, which varies substantially by region. I'm going to focus just on the right-hand side, the percentages. The percentage of underprepared teachers varies from about 18% to 41%, with the darker colors, the dark blue being the highest. There are higher shares of underprepared teachers in many rural areas in the Central Valley and Northern California, with that northeast corner of the state having the highest percentage at 40.5% underprepared. Next slide, please. So adding these data provides a significant opportunity for the C2C to provide greater insights. The benefits include accountability and the ability to target resources where policymakers could evaluate workforce investments. Students would have transparency into their own access to prepared teachers. Educators would have visibility into pathways, program outcomes, and retention. and researchers would have the ability to assess how misassignments shape student success. The risks are manageable. The biggest one is that C2C will need to reconcile differences in the TAMO reporting or choose between the CTC and CDE. And of course, integrate data from multiple data providers. Privacy of the demographic data is always an issue, but C2C is managing that for other data as well. The trade-off is really integrating and aligning data will provide actionable insights. The comprehensive data could support the planned teacher training and retention dashboard and enhance the query builder, enabling research questions and providing a basis for policy evaluation. Because these data are already collected and there are existing agreements between C2C and the relevant state, state agencies, we think the likelihood of success for this proposal should be high. Integrating these elements into C2C would unlock far richer insights about the teacher workforce than is possible with the current metrics. So I want to thank you for your time and engagement. I see I have a couple minutes left, thankfully. Hope I wasn't talking too fast. There were a few questions that were submitted by members of the Data and Tools Advisory Board, which I'll address briefly. So one of the questions was, what do we know about teacher shortages already and how they may vary by space and place? So in short, we don't know a whole lot about teacher shortages by area. But the proposed metrics would allow us to dig into that question. The second question was, are the data available at multiple levels? City, county, school district. So city is tricky. City is not so available unless it coincides precisely with school district. The data are available by district and by county. Third question, does the data include additional social locations aside from race and ethnicity? So gender is included. It wouldn't be a big lift. It's only included as male and female. The non-binary category is not available, but gender could be included. Other variables not so readily available. The variables for socioeconomic status, language, and whatnot are not available. And then the excellent question, could there be a possibility of leveraging CSU UC teacher preparation program data for deeper insights? Yes, the addition of those data could illuminate patterns of pathway placement retention, equity in preparation, and where CSU UC trained teachers serve, at least initially. The longer term trajectory is not as easy to track. But there are significant hurdles and limitations with those data. The key ones are lack of standardization in IHE program data and incomplete coverage. We would not be covering other teachers who are trained out of state or trained at other institutions other than UC and CSU. I think I'm over time. I'm at time. I'm at time.
10 seconds left.
Cool. So I'll stop. I know people can't really ask questions in 10 seconds, but if there are other issues, perhaps they could come up in the conversation later.
Perfect. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. That was our first proposal presentation. Thank you, Member Catanzarite, for that. I would love to now invite members Ortiz-Villar and Fong to provide our next one. Give me a moment to get our timer up. And then as we just saw modeled, the next slide is gonna, yep, we're good. I'm gonna start the timer. You both are ready. Yes?
Ready.
Go.
Awesome. Thank you all. Really excited to bring this proposal to the table. This is a proposal that was submitted by Mayor Curry, Executive Director of NTCPC here in the Bay Area, and also a former member of the Community Engagement Advisory Board. So we're just really excited to talk about the College Promise programs and thinking about them beyond what currently exists in the data set. So we can go to the next slide. So the current definition of the one data point that exists is institution participates in the College Promise program that might waive all or some tuition for students, and this data point only exists from 2007 to 2008 data. And we know that since then, we have increased how many college promise programs exist throughout the state. So we feel like this is currently like a very limited data point and doesn't tell the full story of college promise programs across the state. We have offered some resources in the proposal of an updated definition, one of them being the WestEd definition around financial support that encourages students to attend post-secondary institutions, and that eligibility being based on where the student lives or where the student attends school. We did offer some other definitions that include the national program definition. And so thinking about, if we wanted to align our data in the state to other states' data, thinking about that definition maybe being helpful as well to look into. And we did want to clarify, one of the questions that came in was, is this a proposal to define define this better or to add more data? We believe that the foundation to future data collection around college promise programs really lies on like a clearer definition of college promise. And so that really is at the core of this proposal. And again, with a future consideration of potentially student level data, if we were to define this better moving forward. We can go to the next slide. So again, just wanted to show at glance kind of what we have seen in the data. I did add a chart from one of the reports from WestEd on 3 possible kind of models that exist around college promise programs, which is like first dollar, last dollar, et cetera. And so thinking about one of the suggestions that came in through the questions was, is it possible to think about the various definitions of college promise programs? And we really like that suggestion because I think it could clarify all the different services that are kind of housed within College Promise. And Diana will go into that a little bit next. But again, really want to highlight that there's 120 new programs since 2008. And so we're really missing a lot of data on who's accessing this type of support across the state. So I'll pass it to Diana to share the second half.
Thank you, Member Ortiz-Villar. So if you go to the next slide, please. As she had stated, it's truly more than tuition waivers. And some of these are, place-based or neighborhood services. Some are tied towards, income-based grant scholarships. And some are actually college-specific initiatives where you get guaranteed admission to your closest CSU or, community college or even UC. So that is something that we just really, really need to get clear on is it more than just the dollars? And we are seeing that there is a majority of them are, just one place-based, which is good, and place-based with partnership with income or wraparound services. So the definition would be really helpful. If you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. If we do this, it'll allow our state to be able to just cover all types of programs and different definitions that will identify differences in programmatic support. And then eventually, as Member Ortiz-Villar had shared, we can break it down into the student level data. So that way that'll allow us to see whether these students in this particular promise program are successful or not. Next slide. Thank you. And we shared a little bit. There are just why change this now? Like I said, the current data point is outdated. It just excludes most of the programs that were created after 2008. And we've been collecting data for many years after that. And we just have so many more data points to really get to that student level data. For the student level data, why we want to do this and what we had talked about earlier in terms of research and query is just being able to see who's really benefiting from these programs and kind of what equity gaps exist still, even when we have these resources in place. And maybe those are the things that we can't see in the institutional level data. And then we can actually also shine lights on what's successful when we have funding initiatives like this, like AB 19. And then the federal Department of Education also has a definition. And so future state, if we think that Cradle to Career is leading the way on the state level to have statewide data systems like Cradle to Career, and other states will follow suit, we could potentially see interconnectedness between other states and California state data system. And so even matching that towards the federal definition might be beneficial as well. And then how does this tie to our mission? You all know that we are here to really provide actionable, equitable, equity-focused data. And by expanding this definition, we truly believe that we'll be able to get clearer data points on what and who is benefiting from Promise programs. That's it from me, and I'll open it up and see if anybody has questions with 3 minutes left on the clock. Great, Member Chuck.
Hi, this is Member Chuk. This is a clarifying question. Is the request to be more inclusive of all of the programs that would be falling under College Promise? Because I think there's this tension of the high variability and then collapsing it, and then we're measuring these outputs and outcomes. And I don't know if we can make those claims because the inputs are so diverse. So that's just I mean, I understand like we want to capture these investments of these values, but I don't, or do we want to capture all the different types of, College Promise programs, and then that will be linked to outcomes? So that's where I'm a little bit less clear on.
I'm happy to jump in, but Member Ortiz-Villar, feel free to jump in at any point in time. For us, it really is around getting clear on the definition, right? Because right now we just have, there are too many variables that we really are under capturing and potentially undercounting or misrepresenting student data at this very moment, because we don't have a clear definition. Yeah. Member Reed?
Hi, thanks. I don't want to take up time. I just want to say, as someone coming from Oakland Promise, a program that I think was even referenced in your proposal, I just really appreciate this work, and happy to support if it moves forward. So thank you for raising it.
Thank you. Thank you. Member Catanzarite?
Yeah, thank you. I guess my question overlaps with Member Chook's question. Are you proposing a new definition? Who would be making that definition? Are you leaving that to the C2C staff? And I guess I would lean into a multidimensional definition where there are different variables for what type of College Promise program rather than lumping all College Promise programs together.
Yeah, I love that suggestion that came through the questions, and I think we realized that, like, oh, that's a great idea. Maybe we should have included that or thought about that in the proposal. But I think we see C2C as kind of a driver in uniting all the data, and so we know that data is coming from all these different partners, and so can C2C kind of be the driver in the middle of like trying to help these folks kind of define something at the statewide level. So that's really where we see the role of C2C, and really thinking about, like, there are going to be hopefully feasibility studies done out of this proposal, and so through those feasibility studies, thinking about like what is possible. I think the question of the proposal is, we don't know what's possible, and can we like look into that more through the feasibility studies? Member Mehta.
Hi, I know I have a few seconds left. I just wanted to know if if we're changing the definition, do you feel like it's also going to help with, because I'm part of a local level of a college program, Promise program, and it feels like it being so broad that we even don't get enough student signups. And so just wanted to see if the proposal will look at that.
Leave it there.
I think that's a great suggestion. I think that'll help actually maybe some CBOs who have this broader definition and like program set to really consider how do we best align this definition even to the C2C space. And that is something that we hope the C2C staff also consider as they're looking out into the feasibility study of not just state level programs, but like I said, the US Department of Education has like its own definition of a promised neighborhood and promised program.
Member Fong.
Oh yes.
Sorry, just out of fairness for everyone, we gotta pause here.
And that's
I
it.
appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have our next proposal,
Great.
and that is from Member Shack. Please, we're ready. I can hear you. I'm going to start your timer. Please go.
I'm Member Shack, and I'm here to present on improving data on student homelessness. Next slide, please. And this proposal is based off of a public proposal from public advocates, and want to thank them for kind of sketching out. And then I do want to make the disclaimer that everything I'm about to say expresses my personal views, not necessarily the views of my employer, Santa Clara County. Next slide, please. This housing affordability is increasingly an issue for Californians of all walks of life, and it's particularly an issue for students. And as students transition from childhood to young adulthood, it can be particularly prevalent to experience homelessness. And you can see in this slide that 1 in 4 community college students experience homelessness in the prior year. Students also report through surveys that they face supports that are often scarce and scattered. So there's a real need to improve on supporting students in this crucial area. Next slide, please. And this slide just outlines a lot of the different areas where we could extend research with an improved data element and have an impact that ties in with Cradle-to-Career's mission. I think the two principal areas are kind of helping practitioners to better coordinate services and better link students to housing supports. And then also having a fuller picture that allows the research community and the public to see what are the long-term impacts of homelessness and housing insecurity and how we can do better. Next slide, please. This slide shows the current data element in the Pathways dashboard. And it really shows how these data can uncover powerful insights. This visualization shows that for students who have experienced homelessness, they're about half as likely to complete a 4-year degree as other students. However, there's 2 key limitations of the current data. One is that it's limited to just whether a student has experienced homelessness during grade school, but not in early education, and not again during that transition to young adulthood, which is particularly important. And then the other kind of goal that I have in my proposal is being able to add in finer kind of gradations of housing insecurity when we're students experiencing instability and how profound the housing needs are. Next slide, please. And at the core of this proposal is about incorporating new data from additional sources, and chief among them is the Homeless Data Integration System, also known as HDIS, from Cal HHS. And the good news is that there's already ongoing work from a team within HHS around kind of better integrating these data, creating improved and more comprehensive data standards. And so this dovetails with those efforts. The other thing to be mindful of is there's additional data sources that we could pull from to kind of better triangulate whether students are homeless and also ensure that we're not undercounting students who are less well linked to services and the education institution more broadly. Next slide, please. And just to recap, that this is a really impactful data point that really speaks to the lived experiences of students throughout their educational journey. It allows for practitioners to better design and coordinate services. And then the third point I would make is that it overlaps nicely with the 5-year plan and plans to incorporate more information from social services. And I'll just mention that there's an appendix to this presentation that I'm not going to present on, but it does have some of the more detailed information about sources and the kind of the trade-offs around the proposal. Next slide, please. And then before I open it up to discussion, I just really want to thank members for their input and initial questions. I think for the most part, we can discuss those in more detail during question deliberation and question and answer. But I would say that one question stood out about, are there any states that are really leading on this? And, I think California would be one of the first. This is a real opportunity to lead. But Illinois, they did stand out as having kind of more collection of data, especially from colleges and universities, and also kind of the revised FAFSA form. There might be lessons to learn about capturing individual data on residential status. Thank you again, and let's open it up. Maybe Member Watson and Fung.
Thank you. So the way that the new data are described, are there elements of this that are already, let's see, are there already providing organizations that are providing data and could provide some more data as through this proposal? Is that, and if so, is that already in the general scheme of how this would play out? Like this is accelerating something that might take place a couple of years from now, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely in that vein of, so you have the HDIS data, which are kind of the most kind of broadly used at a statewide level, and that's housed in HHS. And I think the intention, there was a presentation at one of the governing board meetings about these data, and I think the intention is to make them more sort of broadly available and linked with other data, such as the our longitudinal data system. And I will just say one last thing is that there are challenges because those data do focus on services provided. So it can be like street services, shelters. But again, as I mentioned, it may require multiple sources to kind of figure out how do we not undercount people and present a kind of accurate picture. Member Fung?
Thank you so much, Member Shack, for just bringing this data point. This is really a comment of appreciation for highlighting this because it's so critical. I also really appreciate you bringing in the early childhood perspective and the higher education parts. What would be interesting too would actually be tying it to whether families are taking in that new the new $500 grant that they get when a child is born, and like being able to test against that data. And sorry, I'm very distracted because my child is calling me. So thank you. Mostly appreciation. Thank you.
No, but I definitely echo that of, yeah, seeing how other programs, kind of the full view of how they influence housing and homelessness as well as outcomes. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Not so much a question, but just a reflection. Like I'm also just wondering, like, if C2C, right, has like other data on living arrangements overall, like children living with a single parent in like extended or multi-generational households. So I think this proposal is also making me kind of think about more broadly in the future, potentially including those types of data points. So thank you.
Good question.
Thank you. Thank you, members. I appreciate all of that. We have time for one more. This is our last proposal. So I'd love to advance the slide. Perfect. And then we'll just go one more. I'm going to invite members Tarasova and Watson here to start the last proposal. I'm going to start the timer. Are we ready?
Ready.
Ready.
Hi, I'm John Watson with the San Diego County Office of Education, and with member Tarasova, we'd like to present our Cradle-to-Career data and tools member proposal related to higher ed and education outcomes, and career outcomes data for K-12. Next slide. So let me start with the challenge. Currently in California, the K-12 system, our schools, our districts, our county offices, do not have access to data about what happens to students after high school. Without this information, it's hard to know the impact of years of education and student guidance. Did our students go to college? How many entered the workforce? Did our CTE programs lead to interest in various career sectors? Are students leveraging financial aid? What happens to students after high school is currently a question mark.
Just like Member Watson has mentioned, since K-12 systems have very little visibility into what actually happens to students after they graduate, here comes our proposal. Currently, we cannot track easily whether the students go to college, enter workforce, or access support systems like financial aid. This makes it hard to evaluate how effective our programs really are. When we can see the outcomes beyond high school, equity gaps stay hidden. We do not know which groups of students are being left behind and which supports are making the biggest difference. To try to fill this gap, many county offices and districts turn to outside vendors, but the data that they receive is often incomplete, inconsistent across regions, and not always designed with equity in mind. By centralizing these data in the C2C system, we can eliminate duplication, save resources, and make sure that every K-12 organization has the insights they need to make evidence-based decisions that improve student outcomes. Next slide, please.
So our solution is an annual disaggregated Cradle-to-Career data extract. The extract would be a comprehensive longitudinal data set to track post-secondary education enrollment and completion, workforce data and earnings, the services that students provide in, and it would also include demographic breakdowns. Now, this is not student level data, but aggregated data that would connect to current K-12 data sets at the student group level. So there's already a disaggregation method in K-12, and that would be a perfect linkage for this extract and the C2C data. We propose that the extract would be prepared annually and available for download. The data set would be available to districts, county offices, and other institutions serving K-12 students. The thumbnail table you see shown here is in more detail in the application itself, and it's a preliminary list of data points beyond high school. Next slide.
This solution directly supports the larger Cradle-to-Career mission by providing equitable, consistent access to student outcomes data so that every district and county office can make informed decisions with the same high-quality information. Additionally, it is strengthening the education to employment pipeline, the critical mission of C2C. Additionally, it will align local actions with statewide education and workforce goals by helping leaders to implement programs and strategies that reflect California's priorities for equity, opportunity, and student access. By closing these data gaps, this system empowers educators to make evidence-based, equity-driven decisions. It gives every student a clearer pathway to reach their full potential and advances the C2C vision as a more equitable future for all Californians. This concludes our presentation, and we're happy to take any question. And forgive me that we have not practiced this part, but we did receive a few questions, so I would like to jump straight into them. The question number one was, do we expect these data points to substantially change year after year? Would an annual data extract be necessary? And please feel free to jump in, Member Watson. I'll just take a stab at it. While some student outcomes like college enrollment or workforce entry may show gradual trends over time, certain data points can change year to year, especially as programs evolve and new supports are introduced. So yes, an annual data extract is important. It will allow the districts to track progress, identify shifts and outcomes, and adjust strategies accordingly. Do you have anything to add?
That was great.
Okay. I think we'll move on to the questions. I know we have a few raised hands, and just in case, I don't want to reiterate whatever we already said.
That's great. Yeah, let's go ahead and take some questions. So I think the first was Member Khanna.
Thank you so much for your proposal. And again, this sounds really exciting because it's actually tracking it longitudinally. My question to you was, how does this complement or contrast with the National School Clearinghouse?
Okay, well, it's great that there was a recent announcement by C2C that the National Student Clearinghouse will be participating in Cradle-to-Career. So one of the challenges currently for any districts that have high schools is understanding where their students go when they graduate. Some high school districts and some county offices of ed have paid for the fees to use the National Student Clearinghouse services to obtain specific data for their own areas, their districts, or even schools. But the fact that these data will be part of C2C going forward may allow for just an overall solution for all of the counties in our state to be able to understand where their students go.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next question.
Hi, Member Schmidt-Temple, UC Berkeley CEP. The two questions I have, one being, you all mentioned this extract being available to districts and organizations, and I guess just a clarifying question around, is this something that would only be accessible to those folks, or like a public extract? And then a second question is how, another clarifying one, I guess, is this, how does this play a role or in relation to the query builder? Is this a separate tool or within that tool?
Yikes.
I can take the second part of that. The
Okay.
intention behind our proposal is to make sure it's like a template, so you can pre-select it in the query builder tool. So you don't have to select new data points and gather it out and complete a request or anything like that. So you can select it and it will be an automatic download for all those who are requesting that data.
I think that's logically it. Now it really is up to, we've only proposed this at this point. So technically how it would be implemented, we're not entirely sure, but based on the fact that this is disaggregated data, it's not student level data, it might fit the category of query builder type output. So it remains to be seen how it will be facilitated.
And I believe we have one more question from Member Mehta.
Yeah, hi, it's Member Meta from the Chino Valley Chamber. So my question is how are we anticipating to collect the data? Would we have high school students or even college students, or for individuals who didn't go to college, even get their data to see if they chose another career pathway that was not college, to see what they are in the workforce?
I think the easy answer to that is this will be disaggregated, so we won't be at student level with these data. The data would connect to data that is currently available in the K-12 environment and still at a grouped connection point. I mean, that's the extent of data we'll have. I do think we'll be able to answer most of those questions because we're not asking for additional data to be added to Cradle-to-Career. We want to leverage the data that's currently in the system.
Awesome. Member Chu?
This is Member Chuk. I think it's similar. I think my clarifying question was there going to be new data that was collected? It sounds like it's just pulling existing data. And then I was wondering, have you guys also thought about extending this into higher ed? Because I'm in the Cal States and we have very similar types of, queries in terms of what happens to the college students who graduate and then outcome measures. So extending that further from community colleges, UCs, and Cal States.
Yeah, logically, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was hard to see on our presentation, but we have included those data points as well. I'm sure if you take a look at the full proposal, you will find those data points coming from UCs. Oh, Member Fong, I'm so sorry.
And sorry, I was off mute, so you couldn't hear the beep. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. So we've heard from all 4 presenters. And next, what we'll be doing, if we could advance the slides. Yeah, perfect. This is wonderful. We're going to open it up for public comment at this time. So I would love to pass it over to Stephanie Gutierrez Valdez to lead us through this section here.
Confirming that there's no one here at the C2C office wishing to publicly comment. For members of the public attending via Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment on this agenda item. Okay. Confirming I see one raised hand. Okay. For public advocates, I have permitted you to speak. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Hi, my name is Angela Estrada, and I serve as a Student Engagement Associate at Public Advocates, a nonprofit civil rights law firm and advocacy organization. I'd like to thank our partners on the California Higher Education Equity Coalition, Data for the People, and the California Affordable Student Housing Coalition, also known as the CASH Coalition, for supporting the expanding student homeless status proposal. I also want to thank our student partners at the Student Senate for the California Community Colleges, California State Student Association, and the University of California Student Association for their support. In my role, I work directly with students to understand the barriers they face when it comes to housing insecurity and homelessness. Students want visibility so that services can be intentionally outreach to them. And by expanding the homeless status data point, we can learn where the service gaps lie and be able to address them. This proposal would also make it possible to see how housing services, higher education institutions, and other support systems work to support individual students at once. And it's a golden opportunity since Cradle-to-Career is already working with the Center for Data Insights and Innovation to bring HDIS data, and the proposal aligns with C2C's 5-year timeline to add social services in fiscal year 2025 to 2026. I respectfully urge that the expanding student homeless status data proposal submitted by Member Shack be advanced. Thank you so much.
Okay. I see Sarah Buavisa with your hand raised. I have permitted you to speak. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, members. My name is Sara Buabipsa. I'm the program manager with the Institute for College Access and Success, or TICAS. And I'm here today in support of the two proposals to expand the college promise, data points and definition, as well as expanding data on homelessness, impacting students at the community college level. TICAS promotes policies that enhance college affordability, reduce debt pathways regardless of a student's background. And we believe that these two proposals further that mission to better understand what policies and models work for expanding college affordability, reducing debt for students, and how to better support our most vulnerable student populations. And this will support, I believe, organizations like TICAS and public advocates in being able to advocate for stronger policies to reduce equity gaps across our higher education system. So with that, I respectfully ask for your support on these proposals. Thank you.
Okay. Roy Tongilava, I had permitted you to speak. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Good afternoon, Data and Tools Advisory Board members. This is Roy Tongalava with Etchist West. I'm here on behalf of the Data for the People Coalition. Today, we want to express strong support for 3 of the data proposals under this agenda item that will make the C2C data system more equitable and responsive to student and family needs. This includes the educator data proposal, the college promise data proposal, as well as the student homelessness data element proposal. We thank you for your leadership and to the sponsors on the advisory board of these proposals. And we urge you to raise the importance of these proposals to the governing board as these proposals advance to the feasibility study. Thank you.
Confirming no other raised hands, this closes the public comment portion of this agenda item.
Wonderful, perfect. So now we're at the point in the day that we're going to move on to member deliberation. For that part, I'm going to pass it over to Kathy Booth, the Project Director of Economic Mobility, Post-Secondary and Workforce Systems from West Ed, who will be facilitating this section. Before I pass it off, I just want to do a quick time check. We're looking okay, healthy with time. But if members need to stretch or something, keep your camera on and multitask as we round out this last half of the meeting. Kathy, please take it from here. Thank you.
Wonderful. It's so great to be back with many of you that have been part of this committee for a couple of years. I'm Kathy Booth, as you heard, and I was involved in the original planning process for the data system. But the focus of what we're going to be doing now is really having an opportunity for you to think through the ways that these various proposals fit together to create more of a whole. So in your workbook, you were able to take a look at what is similar and what is different about the 4 different proposals that you're considering. So we've got about 10 minutes for this agenda item. And so what I'd love is to have us start by just having you each in turn raise your hand to talk through what do you think is similar across these 4 proposals. Yes, Member Chuk.
This is Member Chuk. I think the high school pathways, higher ed pathways of the teacher workforce are similar in terms of they're looking at outcomes, sort of like existing inputs that are there and sort of what's happening to describe and to be able to examine gaps and inequalities in the system. So I think those 2, I feel like, are well aligned. They're very complementary. One is more focused on teacher education, teacher prep, and the other is more broadly workforce development and higher ed.
Yes, Member Watson.
I noted that the adding pathways for teacher workforce, first of all 4 of these proposals are wonderful. It's neat to hear the feedback from everyone and all the positivity. There are 2 that are asking for additional data points to be added. The teacher workforce and the homeless status. I think the other 2 are looking at data currently in place within C2C.
Member Ortiz-Villar.
Yeah, I think yeah, similar to Member Watson, I just it was great reading all the proposals. I think I was like geeking out a little bit, but yeah, really excited to see kind of C2C as like the connecting piece for a lot of these. So even around like definition building, I think for the homelessness proposal, one of the notes that I had was like, how do we define homelessness across K through 12 versus higher ed? And thinking about C2C kind of being the driver of like unifying all these silos and coming into like common definitions across the state, I think is one of the themes that I saw.
Member Khanna.
Again, thank you so much for all the proposals. I really enjoyed reading all of them, and the details that you put in and the thoughtfulness was very impressive. I will say the commonality, which I really liked, was the two proposals, which is teacher shortages and homelessness, are two issues that most districts are really struggling with in the post-COVID times. And so addressing those and going into detail about those is very impressive. On the other hand, the other two proposals also do build on existing data sets and add to them. So that was impressive as well.
Member Mian.
For me on my end, so I see like the proposals around the teachers' workforce insights and homeless student data as like more pressing social problems where there's like an urgency to address, understand, and kind of analyze students, youth who are experiencing homelessness, but also ensuring that there are enough teachers right in the workforce. So it seems like there's like a level of urgency there, like that that is particularly important in California as like a very expensive place to live in a lot of, counties and cities. So that's kind of where I saw the commonality there. And then in terms of the other two proposals, they seem to be more like improving either like the tools on the C2C side or the analysis or like how people can analyze the data that's there. So they could also be social problems, of course, but I think the other two are just like to me they feel like urgent and like there's a lot of stakeholders, including the public comments that folks are adding like a lot of weight to like why this type of work might be important. So thank you.
Great. Member Katanzite.
So maybe it kind of goes without saying, but I think at the most basic level, all of the proposals are addressing equity issues and trying to support student success and track that.
Any other similarities that struck members of the group? Yes, Member Schmidt-Temple.
Member Schmidt-Temple, I think to the last comment, there's equity, and we're all of these proposals are really trying to get at student experiences and student outcomes. And I think the great thing about these proposals is some of them are adding, some of them are enhancing or redefining, and then all of those kind of work in to complement the idea around the post-secondary high school student pathway extract, because that is how we then see the work of the other ones, right? If we can't see and gather that data and use that data, then the definitions are great. But I think all of these things complement each other really well because we're trying to get at student outcomes and experiences, and then also the public can get that data directly. So I appreciate the complementariness of the proposals.
Great. And Member Tarasova.
Yeah, I would like to highlight that the teacher workforce insights and the college promise data both address the access to quality education and equity in the resources. And on the other hand, I can see definitely that homeless student data and post-high school outcomes more focus on the supporting vulnerable populations and tracking long-term successes in that regard.
All right, so now we're going to pivot and let's talk a little bit about how the proposals are different from each other. So what were some of the things that struck you? Was it that you were mostly seeing similarities, or that the differences were not significant related to what you would do next in your deliberation? Member Schmidt-Temple.
Member Schmidt Temple, I think the thing that struck me is I'm constantly thinking about these things from the C2C team and the building side, and I think it's the long term and short term priorities. I think are is the immediate difference that comes to mind whenever we're adding new data points. I'm thinking about, what are those existing relationships with data partners? What are the relationships that then need to be created? And then what is the defining of those data elements and really getting those into place? And that seems a little bit more of a long-term goal. And then there's some other kind of shorter term proposals here that seem to try and get at what's immediately in the system. And so I think balancing that against the 12-year, or I'm sorry, the 12-year, the 1 year, 12-month plan, and then the 5-year plan is going to be important.
Member Yi.
Yeah, I guess one of the differences that I saw that I actually really liked in both the teacher proposal and the houseless proposal is that there's details about how you want that data variable to be collected. So with the teacher one, you want to see if the teachers are going to be full-time employees, out of field, um, things like that. And also, member Shaq's proposal talked a lot about collecting the homelessness indicator, things like preceding enrollment over 30 days, 12 months, 5 years. And I think having that specificity in that data collection is actually going to be really helpful for something that's so policy relevant and timely. So that's just my comment.
Member Fong.
Yeah, I think my comments are really around kind of the ability to click down deeper into the student level data, or actually if it's broader on this like district level, like the teacher data, I was like, oh, okay, could see it at the district level, but I wasn't sure how it would click down to the student individual level, maybe. And that's how I felt even with the post-secondary high school pathways one, is that it really wouldn't, I don't think the recommendation was to click down to that student level data either. It was really to keep it at this higher level. Whereas the homelessness and I think the enhancing college promise, really you can click down because it's all about counting accurately, actually, in the system.
Member Shaq.
Thank you. I'm Member Shaq. I think this dovetails with, I think, a few of the previous comments that I think some of the differences might be more around implementation and kind of what kind of effort is required to do each of these, the post-high school outcomes, workforce, that's more aggregate data. I think that there will be quite a bit of work in terms of like design and sort of those sorts of considerations of how do you display these data, but less so in sort of the underlying data. The proposal on homeless status, so my proposal also, um, college promise, I think there might be some thorny kind of definitional issues and pretty basic like conceptually, but then actually figuring out how you measure might be challenging. And then the last thing I just wanted to say was on the teacher workforce, having kind of previously worked quite a bit in higher ed, is I feel like it's sort of at the intersection of higher education, but then also elementary and secondary. And sometimes those kind of intersectional areas can kind of get lost because people in each domain don't focus as much on those. So I think that's one thing that I'm just kind of keeping in mind that makes that one stand out.
Member Catanzarte.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to reiterate things that other people have said, but too much, but I agree with Member Shack. I think that there are some big differences in how these different proposals would be implemented. The College Promise proposal would require some thinking about what the definition ought to be and how we measure that. I think that's really important. It's just so I won't go into too much detail. The teacher data, I think, we're looking both at like how teachers progress and how they, enter the workforce and how they get their degrees, but also their impact on students. And while this wouldn't necessarily be a drill down for students, I would hope that the teacher data at the school level and the county level could be used as contextual variables for multi-level analyses, so that we are connecting that aggregate data with individual level data in the appropriate cases.
Like one more comment, so Member Fong.
Yeah, I think what is really interesting here with the teacher proposal is I think it like stops at K through 12 or early ed to 12, right? And I think what is already begging me to question is actually the post-secondary kind of educator pipeline as well, and like how qualified and credentialed are those folks, and how does that lead to post-secondary success or workforce success? And yeah, so it's like this is like a good start and foundation, which I think is really important. And then I can see us actually wanting to build more because I think that'll also help lead us to the last proposal around outcomes, earnings, and grad outcomes.
Great. All right, so what we have now is about 20 minutes in which we're going to be digging into sort of the big picture. So this is really your chance to think about how you want to frame these issues as you relate to the governing board. So I've got a series of questions and that are going to go up on the screen right now. So I'd like to try to take these in turn, but if there ends up being ideas that you have about a later question, that's also okay. So let's just start out with which proposal do you think has the strongest connection to the mission, vision, and authority of C2C? Let's start with Member Schmidt-Temple.
Thank you, Member Schmidt-Temple. I think all of these proposals have a very strong connection to the mission and vision and authority of C2C. I'm particularly connected to the pathways extract idea because I feel like it's a proposal of immediate exposure to very diverse data elements that are already being collected in the system. And I think that the mission of C2C and allowing individuals and organizations to make immediate use of that data aligns with that. That is what C2C is about. And so, again, I think all of these proposals have very strong connections, but the range of entities that could possibly be using this data, especially because of what's possible right now with the Student Pathways Dashboard, again, to a comment I made earlier, is really great. And when we look at the amount of data elements that are possible and the amount of entities in California that could be using it, I think this really expands just the exposure of C2C to the rest of the state.
Great. Member Terasova.
Thank you, Member Schmidt, for highlighting the proposal so I don't have to highlight my own. That would have been very awkward. But I would like to highlight enhanced college promise definition. I think a lot of students are accessing the program and highly benefiting a program that otherwise they would not be able to get a higher education. So making sure that this is a strong connection to CDC ensures accurate and equity focused tracking of the program that makes a huge difference in our students' lives, I think would be a critical addition to the CDC data.
Member Fong.
Thank you so much. And very similarly, I'm glad you highlighted it so I didn't have to highlight it. So thank you for that. I did want to actually hark back to what Marianne Bates had shared earlier in her executive report around the state's kind of movement towards the career passport and where they're investing their money. And so with the career passport, right, I think that there's a lot of energy around the state of thinking about the pathways in which students are moving from post-secondary to, or from higher education to careers. And then the second thing actually is around the teacher pathway. I know that the teacher pathway is something that we've in California have seen shortages and headlines around. And so even the tracking of high quality teachers and that pathway, I know we're tying that to student success, but I could also see that being kind of a surprise data element for the state to actually pull out to say this is a viable pathway for many Californians as well.
Member Chuck.
This is Member Chuk. I think all four proposals, as stated by others, are very strong and important. I think two that stood out for me is the data extract and the teacher workforce. And I think the teacher workforce insights allow us to think about the foundations that our students need that will eventually get, it's the investment of the education system and teacher workforce that allows the other workforce outcomes to happen. So I think, both are really well aligned with this notion of following where students in the educational systems towards sort of the outcomes. So I think those two stood out for me in terms of the alignment piece. And I think all four are super important, I think, but those two stood out for me the most.
Member Unda.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow Member Unda here from community college area. I'll definitely support what Member Chuck was saying. I think the four proposals are really strong, but I will definitely highlight the last one, the one that is going from all the milestones. And I just went directly to the mission, and for me, that proposal provides actionable data on the education side, on the economic side because of the pipeline with workforce. And that's for individuals, families, and communities. I'm just reading from the mission, and it does expand the access to navigate that pathway from education to employment. So for me, that's, if I go to the mission and I focus on what the mission of Cradle-to-Career is, to me, that's the strongest one.
Member Ortiz-Villar.
Yeah, I think agreed. Everybody just kind of saying how strong all of them are. And I really want to talk about Member Mian's comment earlier about like the sense of urgency. And so that kind of has been driving me as I'm hearing everybody talking and really feeling like the teacher pathways and the homelessness data does feel like the most urgent in our state. And so even though I proposed the college promise, and I still think that's important, in terms of like that urgency, I think is really what is driving, kind of elevating those two at the moment. It does feel like the other two could fit as a 5-year plan and thinking like ahead, but those two to me feel like the most kind of like timely this year focus.
Member Khanna.
I'm sorry, I do have to reiterate again, but looking at equity, longitudinal data, as well as urgency or current times, I would highlight the teacher workforce as well as the homelessness as two proposals that do come up to the forefront. And it is good actually to look at longitudinally as to what happens to our students once they graduate and go to careers and learn from it. But those two that I mentioned are urgent and needed.
And the last comment from Member Mehta.
Okay. Hi, Member Mehta from the Chino Valley Chamber. So yes, like if we're talking in terms of priorities and urgencies, and someone that does work with career pathways in our regional level here, the data extracts from figuring out those data to see what career pipelines one should work on, that would be really vital data. And I do see that being missing in many parts, as well as the teacher workforce. Because there's a lot of career pathways, since we don't have the data, that even teachers are not being even placed in like ROP programs, such as like woodshop or different categories of programs that used to exist but do not exist. And sometimes not having those pipelines in high schools might be affecting the future workforce as well. So I feel like those two those two proposals are high priority because we can really start working on those projects as well.
So I want to make sure that we have time to get to the other questions. So the next one was going to be which proposal has the highest likelihood of success and impact? We have been talking a fair amount about impact already, but Member Fong, I saw that you had your hand raised. Do you want to cover both, or what comment do you want to share?
Yeah, this actually can tie to both questions. The first one in the beginning. I know it may not seem very urgent, but very much like the foundational pieces, the mission for us is to be able to provide Californians with trusted information and data. And right now, if you look at the College Promise definition, it isn't a trusted source, and it shouldn't be a trusted source because there really is no clear definition. And very similarly, like the homelessness definition, it's not clear across all of our systems. And so I think it is the C2C's responsibility and the responsibility of DTAB to be able to push that so it is more transparent, and we have these other systems that are accountable to a unified definition. In terms of the larger impact and what we could see is there are 120 plus promise programs with no unified definition. Actually, California, the state, has its own California Promise program, if y'all didn't know. And it could be really a way for there to be kind of coalition abroad that. And again, expanding that to other states or being a model for other states who also have their own promise programs.
Anyone else want to talk about which one has the highest likelihood of success and potential impact? Yes, Member Schmidt-Temple.
Member Schmidt-Temple, in this, I want to kind of go off of what Member Fong spoke to as well. I think that the College Promise definition proposal is absolutely needed and is very much in alignment with the mission. And I think that it also allows, redefining and getting to a clear definition really also allows for future data collection and partnership. And I think that's a wonderful resource. I think when I think of the authority of C2C is where I think I run up against some tension, because although C2C is the nexus of all of this data, I fear around the authority it has to create that definition rather than lean on the experts in the field to create that definition, or as was mentioned earlier, multiple versions of that definition, right? So I think that's the only tension that I have in regards to that proposal. I think in um, the adding pathways and placement data to strengthen teacher workforce proposal, I'm really seeing that as strong as well, specifically because what's being proposed is both a reflection of educational outcomes and employment outcomes, right? It's how are our students being impacted by these teacher education issues, but also like that is an employment opportunity for Californians and for other people across the state. And we understand that there's a shortage there. And so I see that being multi-factor. So I'll stop there to make space for others.
Thank you. Member Shack.
Thank you, Member Shack speaking. I think I mainly want to address kind of impact as well. And I think the teacher workforce proposal, the more I think about it, is kind of standing out for me because I think it does go to kind of the heart of a lot of equity questions. And even through the presentation, like there were slides where I was like, whoa, that's really teaching me something even in this short presentation. So definitely want to lift that up. On College Promise, that's kind of an area that is, I think, fairly near and dear to me because it speaks a lot to affordability and how to affordable colleges. I think one question, and if somebody knows, is like, we have some sense of the number of programs, but how many dollars are we talking about? Are we putting and investing a lot of money in these programs? Because if we are, then that would seem pretty urgent to me. to answer these questions. And then the final thing is just on my proposal on the homeless indicator. I think in terms of implementation, there will be some challenging questions for sure. And how do we measure this appropriately? But I am hopeful that I think the data providers and partners are going to be good kind of collaborators for the Cradle-to-Career system, and that's one of the reasons why I was pretty enthusiastic about sponsoring.
Great. Member Unda.
Yes, I wanted again to highlight proposal for going from getting out of the high school and trying to connect those students to what happens after in higher education and their careers. If you go to the 12-month annual plan from C2C, one of their priorities is to integrate and make operational new data partners into the data system to provide this more complete picture of the student experience. They are also working in this 12-month annual plan on the transfer outcomes dashboard. That dashboard is also a priority for them this year. That dashboard is very much related to post-high school data, so that also makes it a very strong proposal. It also, this annual plan prioritizes partnership with California community colleges to provide dual enrollment college transcripts so that we get unified high school transcripts for the California colleges project. So again, I'm going for that one because as much as I try to stick to, Kathy, what you sent, which was a rubric looking at the 5-year plan, looking at the 12th annual plan, I believe that if you're looking very strictly, again, the 4 proposals are so strong that I was really trying to be very strictly looking at what you were asking, so I could actually say, okay, this is the one that I would, support. I think the arguments that are being shared by my peers are all fantastic. But again, and that could be part of my assessment piece, where if I'm given a rubric and I'm giving certain criteria to look at them, because these proposals are just they're all so solid, that I was just trying to go into more specifically what you were asking.
Thank you. Member Ortiz-Villar.
Yeah, I just want to answer Member Shaq's question about like where the funding is going to, and I think we tried to highlight that in our proposal for the College Promise program. One of the college programs is the community college program, and there's a report from 2025 that speaks to how much money is actually being allocated at the state level, and it's close to 91 million in 2022, 2023. So kind of to answer that question, like there is a lot of money being invested into these programs, and that's just one of the models, which is why I want to just double down on like why we obviously think our proposal is important, because there is physical money going to these programs that, again, we don't have actual reliable data to see if they're actually working or not. So just want to answer that question.
Thank you. So some of you have begun to touch on this, but what do you think are the potential risks and drawbacks that could arise from specific proposals? Member Milan.
Thank you for this question. So first, I would like to address the proposal on college promise programs. So I do feel like it's an important proposal. To me, it's sounding more like a research question, where this would be like an interesting research question to ask, to kind of compare, analyze like all the different kinds of college promise programs in California, and maybe see like whether they're effective or not. And so I'm not sure if it's setting a precedent that C2C is in a way applying analytical frameworks versus giving people the tools to do that themselves. And so it goes back to like the mission of C2C, where trying to serve a very wide range of users, from students, staff, CBO staff, also researchers. So I think it brings up some of those tensions of like, are we doing some of the analytical work on behalf of people where like they should kind of be doing that work instead. But then it's a catch-22 because if they don't have a good definition and like there is no working definition and if they don't have the data, then the research can't be done. So I don't know, there's something very interesting there for me that I feel like is worth just bringing up. And then the next one that I wanted to go, I'll try to be really quick on the data extract. So for that one, I was just like, my question was around clarity. Like, is this going to be an implementation? So it was brought up, like, is this going to be a dashboard, a query builder? But now after hearing the presentation, it sounds more like an expedited research request. And so again, like, I'm not sure if this is setting like a certain kind of precedent, like why this and maybe not other data extracts. And so to me, maybe the solution would be like if there's enough expedited requests that are coming through for this type of data, then maybe that warrants turning it into a dashboard or turning it into a query builder, right? That's more accessible. And then because we see such a demand. And so again, kind of like, are we setting a precedent by like emphasizing or prioritizing certain types of data over others? And so, another just like food for thought, just based on these two proposals. So thank you both for bringing that up because I think it's a very, very interesting question around C2C's capacity, but also like what do we prioritize and what don't we prioritize in a given year.
Member Ortiz-Villar.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Member Bian. I'm questioning my own proposal. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I really appreciate the line of questioning. I think similarly to your second comment about the data extract, I think my biggest question when I was reading the proposal was, isn't this just the query builder that we're already working on? And wondering like, is it kind of like repeating work or doubling work for the office to now do something separate instead of really honing in on the current query building and like building that out in a way where districts can do that pull out on their own without needing an extra person or workload or work project for the office. So that was my kind of biggest question slash concern is this something that districts can just do on their own? And maybe there's something on the community engagement that needs to happen to get folks to actually like do that on their own and continue to spread awareness around the query builders that are already in the works.
Member Catanzarite.
Thank you. I kind of want to congratulate Member Mian for for really taking a critical eye and having the courage to to raise some important questions. So in advancing the teacher pathways proposal, I was concerned that we were leaving it to C2C to decide whether, how to adjudicate between the CTC data versus the CDE data on teacher assignments. And I thought, is that our job in putting forward the proposal to make a recommendation? Are we, is it reasonable to ask them to use both and do that reconciliation? And I was troubled by that. And that is my concern with the College Promise project as well. And so I really, when I saw that proposal, I recognize this is a really important area, but I agree with you, Member Mian, that I don't think that it is the charge of the C2C to identify the critical metrics. I think that should come in the proposal, and maybe there's a research project that someone could partner with WestEd or and really tease out like what are the different dimensions of College Promise programs? What would we recommend as being several, multidimensional metrics on, what are the important aspects of College Promise programs? Because I would hate to see us just put in like a new definition that's really a big umbrella for anything that wants to call itself a College Promise program. So, I'm troubled by that. And I think maybe that needs to be sorted out before it comes, before it moves forward with C2C. And then Member Ortiz-Villar and others, I'm hearing similarly with the pathway data, the student pathway data. I think that's really important, and I wonder what's the overlap with the current query builders. As I was thinking about that one, I thought, what other metrics ought to be in this? Like, this is what are we actually proposing? There are some other key metrics that could be included as well. And what is what is that proposal really trying to advance, and what's the overlap with existing tools? With the homeless data, the biggest issue I saw was, data reliability and uniformity. Like, are we really confident? And I don't know those data sources, so I defer to others, but are we really confident that we are accurately capturing, the housing insecurity issues? Because I would hate to say we've got it, here's the metric, and now we're either finding statistically significant differences or not, but our metric is really not as accurate as we would like it to be.
Member Fong.
Thank you for raising those. I agree with a lot of what folks are saying. There were two that I was thinking about, especially around the teacher pathways one. I am passionate about I am a teacher. I'm passionate about teacher data. And one of the things that I was looking at is around like assignment status. And one of my concerns was that we would have teachers who have like clear credentials or clear and active credentials, but actually aren't placed in schools or in communities, or some who are retired, not that it's ineffective, but actually retired and not in school systems. So it did make me wonder if there is another way to get even clearer on that, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure fully. And then very similar around the post-secondary success, it did make me think about the data extract and whether that really is anything that we can see. Like, I feel like we can already take that and extrapolate some of that data from what already exists on the dashboard on the student pathways data set. But I know that it is limited because you can really only choose like one district at a time or all districts, versus like I want to really focus on like a region and 3 districts, or 4 or compared districts. So there's something there that I think would be a little difficult to pull out.
Member Shack.
Member Shack. I think 2 things I want to quickly cover. One is just on the kind of implementation of homeless status. I just want to acknowledge, I think Member Contenzia Vite made some really good points about, I think, the challenges of like how reliable are these data. And in terms of the specific indicators that I laid out, I think a feasibility study would really have to go through each of those and see, how accurate those are going to be. I think a broader measure, like has someone ever been homeless? I think I feel more confident in that kind of measure, but has somebody been homeless within the last 30 days? That I think that may be more challenging, and you need to do some analysis on that. The second point, I want to just echo Member Milan sort of on this point about the post-high school data extract that I think there are some real decisions there in terms of the metric, and and it is focused on a kind of a specific audience. And so I'm kind of 2 different views. One view is I like the idea of moving away from proprietary data, and I think that is a real positive of that proposal. But at the same time, kind of elevating certain data points in certain kind of users. I think one possible amendment that I'm kind of thinking about is making it kind of really transparent about the metrics and about what is chosen. And maybe a starting point is actually to start with a dashboard where you develop a dashboard around these questions. And then what's included in that dashboard then goes to the extract template. So it's just sort of available to everyone concerned. Thank you.
Okay, Member Watson.
Just a quick comment on the proposal that we brought forth regarding the extract. I don't know that this is a trivial, it may be a more complex type of extract than the query builder would be initially designed to support. And additionally, the way to connect these data and a method of disaggregation of the data that would connect to K-12 data so that you could actually see these strands and threads might be different than the default query builder capability is planned for. So we thought about that. We thought about the query builder. I think I even talked to some on C2C staff about whether there's a fit or not. We know the data is important. So I'm actually looking forward, if there is a prospect for a feasibility study, I think that could tease out some of these questions and understand what's possible, what's plausible, and go from there.
Great. So I'm going to check in with Mary Kate because I know we're at time, although we haven't gotten to the final question, but I feel like we've had a really rich discussion. Should we close now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the last question that we're thinking about that we haven't touched on is the relation to the work plan. So what I think we should do, we can kind of condense the next agenda item a little bit. Let's maybe 5 minutes. Does that feel reasonable to folks?
Wonderful. So we already heard one comment where you had a direct connection to what's possible in the work plan. So what other thoughts do you have when you're looking specifically at where this would fit in the next 12 months as well as the next 5 years? Member Watson.
I guess I should again kind of rally behind that fourth proposal and say, I think it can be accomplished in a short period of time. And I think that's an important consideration.
Member Schmidt-Temple.
Member Schmidt-Temple, I think when I'm looking at, I come back to the question. I think the points around why these data for the fourth proposal are good questions. But I come back to, I think, a question I actually asked in a different agenda item, and it maybe can't be discussed right now, but like, why go? Somebody made the suggestion around if the demand for it and the research requests is there, then maybe we move to something along this extract. And I guess, I know that there's a lot that goes into the 12-month work plan and the 5-year work plan and things like that. But I wonder, in the 12-month work plan, why go to the smallest population of folks with with being researchers before broadening out something like the query builder. I think this fourth proposal makes me think about, whether it's a query builder or not, just a larger population of people being able to use the system. And so more tension than suggestion or anything like that, but that's just my initial thought around it.
What about that long-term time frame? Were there proposals where your thought was maybe that this is not for right now, but this definitely should be on the roadmap in the longer term? Member Shack.
Member Shack. I think the only one that may be on that list is I think the College Promise developing better definitions, that maybe now is the time to start engaging in these conversations of what's the appropriate definition that we would lift up within the Cradle-to-Career system, but it may be a somewhat longer term effort of actually kind of implementing and collecting that information.
Member Catanzarite.
Yeah, I just want to +1 member Shack's comment. I think that one is on a longer timeline.
Any final thoughts before we close this portion of the discussion? Well, great. This has been such a rich conversation, so I'll pass it back to Mary Kate.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Kathy Booth, for facilitating today's conversation. And thank you to members. Kathy said it very well. It was a very insightful and rich conversation. What I'd like to do now, it's 2:01, so let's just acknowledge that. But it was worth it. So if members can just stay on the line a moment longer, we do have a few more agenda items. Let's move on to agenda item 7, which is a report out of the community ambassador work from advisory board members related to Cradle-to-Career mission and vision. I'll be presenting this in tandem with Ryan Estrellado, our director of data programs. And Ryan is going to kick us off. Please.
Thank you, Mary Kate. Okay, so the office would like to give appreciation in this agenda item to 2 data and tools advisory board members who have gone above and beyond in their roles as C2C ambassadors. Next slide, please. First round of thanks goes to former Data and Tools Advisory Board member, Dr. Reagan Faust. Member Faust used her expertise in early childhood data and research when she advised C2C data program staff on use cases for the parental education and socioeconomic status data elements. This advice was critical for the office developing the recommendation that we made to the governing board on this very topic. And thank you also to member Dr. John Watson. Member Watson is consistently engaged with the office and is a reliable resource. When data program staff need input on analytic tools, his thoughtful feedback is informed by his work at the San Diego County Office of Ed, and this feedback has been helpful, especially lately, for the first phase of the query builder that we talked about earlier in the last discussion item, among other things. So thank you again to member Faust and also to member Watson. And now I'll pass it back to Mary Kate.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. So prior to today's presentation, the office asked Data and Tools Advisory Board members to share events in their community that they would like to be uplifted at today's meeting. So I would just like to give a special shout out to members Chook, Unda, Norris, Fong, Yi, Miyan, for sharing the events that are reflected on this virtual bulletin board. And I would encourage us all to take a look, maybe even attend them and uplift them within your communities. The next slide here is if anybody wants to say anything, share anything out. Yes, member Schmidt-Temple, please.
Member
And
Schmidt-Temple.
then, sorry, thank you. I'll just go through the order real quick. Cameron Schmidt-Temple, please first, member Catanzarite next, and then we'll close it out with member Ortiz Pilar. Thank you so much.
I just want to give a huge shout out to folks that sponsored a proposal. I know that this was probably a very long and difficult process, and there's been a lot of critical discussion around it. And I really appreciate the engagement that those folks have put into making this system better. So just a shout out to you all for taking on these proposals.
This is member Catanzarite. I want to congratulate the C2C team. I thought that I think that the evolution of the Data and Tools Advisory Board has been really excellent over the last several years, as the team is working to iron out some ambiguities and some process questions. I really thought that the use of the Google Documents today to ground the discussion was super helpful. So congrats to the C2C team. It's clear you all put a lot of work into this, and I think it really paid off. I really appreciated today's meeting.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna echo what member Sarita just said. Really appreciate the workbook and just like all the homework that we had to do beforehand. I think it really helped with like preparing us for a rich discussion. I would say like this is one of the richer discussions that I've been a part of. I've only been here 1 year, so maybe there was richer discussions before my time as well. But just really excited to see also the energy and excitement that the new members are bringing. So welcome to the board advisory board, and just yeah, shout out to the office and the new members.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the new members who are here today and joining because you all dug in. I'm pretty sure I heard everybody's voice who's a new member, whereas in the past, for your first meeting, you're like kind of shy. But you had didn't hold back. And I really, really appreciated that because that just makes us better as a board. So appreciate it all. And I'm glad we're on the board together.
Wonderful. I think there were lots of really great comments, plus ones to all of them. Thank you all members. We appreciate you. We appreciate staff and new faces in the room. Well said. Let's move to our next agenda item, which is general public comment. So if I could have Stephanie Gutierrez Valdez, please walk us through this. Thank you.
Okay, confirming that there's no one at the C2C office wishing to speak. For members of the public attending via Zoom, please raise your hand so we can get a count of how many general public commenters we may have. Okay, giving it some pause. Seeing no raised hands, I'll close the general public comment.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so this is bringing us to our last item here, which is adjournment. So I would love to we had a really great moment of gratitude together right now. I would like to officially adjourn this meeting at 2:07 p.m. I would like to thank all the speakers we had with us today and appreciate your time and effort that you invested in preparing for presenting today. I would also like to thank members of the public that joined us. We had 3 folks that commented. We appreciate you sitting on the line. And thank you for everyone's questions, comments, and continued support, which help ensure that the work remains transparent, inclusive, and responsive to the needs of Californians. There was lots of important conversation that took place today, and I particularly want to acknowledge the fine work of the Cradle-to-Career office and staff. I speak for the advisory boards when I say we appreciate you. The Community Engagement Advisory Board will be meeting next on Friday, October 24th. And this will also be a hybrid meeting with members conducting the meeting from remote locations and C2C staff operating out of the Cradle-to-Career office at 400 R Street in Sacramento. The governing board meeting will be next on Friday, November 14th. And that will be in person, so folks can feel free to join us in the office. And lastly, noted on this slide, we will see all of you together again on March 25th. And so folks, remember, if you presented on a proposal today, you're going to have those light touch feasibility studies. That work is going to be offline after this meeting, so more to come. And then I'm looking for those 2 volunteers by Halloween. So thank you, and we'll see everybody soon. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Happy
y'all.
holidays.
Everyone,
Bye.
have a good weekend. Bye.